All right, we're
Okay.
live.
All
How's it
right.
going?
So, yeah, good, good. Hey, so I got three contentions for you. They're all
Okay.
kind of pointing at the same thing. Has to do with the moral obligation. So I'm just going to spell them out for you right now. One, two, and three. So the
Okay.
first one is changing the definition of veganism changes the core of what veganism actually represents and erodes the United stance of the rights-based message and movement. So that's point number one, and
Okay.
we'll circle back to it. Point number two is supporting practices that don't advocate for animal rights gives the populace a false sense of moral righteousness or correctness and disengages from the true principle of veganism as a moral obligation, thereby neglecting the moral imperative we have to act on and advocate for, and basically immobilizes the movement as a consequence. So
Okay.
that's contention two. And then contention three is that the most effective way to advocate for veganism is by uniting as a group under the current definition of veganism and advocating for the development and use of animal-free alternatives in all forms in which the core vegan message of animal rights can be ascertained. So those are the 3 points. They all kind of feed into each other. First one, second one, third one, they all kind of they essentially lead to the point, which is that if we begin to change the definition of veganism, we're going to run into a problem where the rights-based message is no longer going to be the focus of the movement, and we're basically not going to be promoting the abolition of animals from agriculture. So it basically, the idea here is that it's actually the opposite. I think it's the opposite of what you think. So far up to this point, everything that you've talked about has kind of been along the lines of like, hey, we need to broaden the message. We need to kind of, make it so that people can fit into the movement, and then we pull them over the edge to the abolitionist side. And of course, you've brought up some points where, they basically you would I would say prioritize other things over veganism in certain circumstances that I don't agree with. And we kind of talked about like the health thing and I think that was basically the big one there, was that, hey, somebody needs it for their health, right? So by the end of this, the idea here is that you'll see that the moral implications of keeping the message united under this definition, how that will actually play out to be more effective for animal liberation. So we can kind of start at the beginning here.
Okay. Well,
So
real quick, just to clarify, what you just said on the health. Can you remind me really quick, if humans were obligate carnivores, you did land in the camp of you would eat as little as possible to survive or have optimal health or somewhere in between, right?
Yeah, the I did bring up that basically, if you are in that category of species, and I don't believe humans are, but let's just say like an alien species, was a carnivorous, right? They needed some form of, I don't even know what's in meat that they would need, because you can
Mm-hmm.
get everything from plants. But let's just say, certain things about plants they can't consume. Well, you would be obligated to start uh, eating the basically the non-sentient,
Mm-hmm.
meats that are there, like mussels and stuff like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
whatever's practicable, maybe you can work your way up. But that's if you're an obligate carnivore, and basically plants are poisonous
Okay.
to you.
I
You
just wanted to
know,
make sure that you weren't in the camp of let oneself starve to death, which is fine to be in that camp. I was just curious for our conversation. And then another
yep.
quick note. I'll save my notes from the three contentions for when you go back through them. But another
Okay.
quick thing I just wanted to throw out there is I don't want to get people partway started on veganism and then pull them over the edge. It would be great if somebody could go vegan right away. It'd be great if they could start and then get pulled over the edge. But it'd also be great if they did anything, in my mind. If somebody did like meatless Mondays for the rest of their life and never became vegan, it's better than if they didn't do meatless Monday. So the pulling over the edge isn't like some sneaky tactic of mine of what I need. I just, as a human that exists, if I could play any part in getting less harm to animals, I will do so, even if that includes convincing a meat eater to just cut back one meal in their entire life. So it's not always about pulling over the edge. So, anyways,
Sure. But I would say that, like, say for example, so we're talking about the definition of veganism in this debate. So I
yeah,
would say that if we are going to make the claim that we need to change the definition, that we need to substantiate that with something that's like, we really need to change it, you know. But what I'm suggesting is that we don't need to change it at all. It's perfectly fine the way it is, and that basically, if we change it, we're going to erode our moral stance. We're not going to have the
okay.
stance to stand on, or the the conclusions to stand on that are really meaningful. So like, so basically, let's just go to the first contention here. So changing the definition of veganism changes the core of what veganism actually represents and erodes the united stance of the rights-based message. So the current definition of veganism under the Vegan Society, I believe, accurately represents the moral position of veganism. Now, I've watched some of the other talks that you've had with people where they advocate for the original definition, and I like that definition too. I think that's a very good one as well. In fact, I don't see why the Vegan Society couldn't just like maybe add that, on their little webpage where they have the definition on there. But let's just say, let's not go there right now. Let's just talk about the current definition. So I think it accurately represents what our moral position is, because wouldn't you agree that basically what we're trying to do is abolish animal agriculture?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I don't think that's most vegans stance, but that's a very wild take that I have. Is that your
Well,
take?
hold on. Why wouldn't it be the vegan stance to
I,
abolish animal
th- I
agriculture?
I think they all would, but they would not stop there. I don't know if veganism would exist if we never had farming. If everybody just like hunted and that kind of thing, I would still be against it. I would still hope for a different world. I would not make it a legal thing. But yes, so anyways, the idea of the focusing on factory farm or focusing on farming in general, animal agriculture, that's kind of like a huge goal that we're probably not going to see in our lifetimes, but that's something I want, which is why I always say that somebody that hunts and therefore eats that much less of factory farmed or any kind of farmed animals, they're more vegan than the people that eat factory farm stuff. I just don't think most vegans would take that stance. They would want to abolish all animal consumption, which is fine
Well,
too.
okay, yeah, that would be more accurate, because obviously hunting, I didn't include that in abolishing animal agriculture, but vegans would abolish hunting too. It's one thing I've noticed though is that your positions are, hey, we don't need to do this in a legal sense. We just need to do it in a social sense. Is that right? Because haven't you said, like, I don't think we should legally abolish animal agriculture, for example?
Okay, so I think law is all that matters, which is why I think a push for animal welfare is the most important thing in veganism, which I was going to bring up when we got to number 2 here. But no, I have not been convinced that we should force every human to legally not be allowed to eat animal products. Because I just don't think veganism is new enough that I don't think we quite have enough studies or understanding to outlaw this practice. I want to change hearts and minds when it comes to consuming animals, but when it comes to the law, I think it is perfectly fine to make tail docking illegal, to make dehorning illegal, to make branding illegal. If you need like switching over to just like putting a tag in the ear versus branding a hot brand.
So let's just say we did the welfare approach, and then we decided, okay, now we have all of these farms that basically treat the animals with enough, give them, I don't even know how to describe it, but give them enough welfare that when we look at them, our feelings aren't hurt or whatever. But my question is, if we're going to approach this in a way where suddenly animal welfare becomes the focus, aren't we just going to create a world where suddenly meat is going to decrease to a point, and then it's going to be only available to those who can actually afford to buy it? Because right now we already know that there's tons of subsidies that go to lowering the price of meat. And if we do what you're suggesting, which is like give all these animals welfare, like for example, I'm sure you'd be against like farrowing crates for pigs,
Yeah.
like because they're confined, and all these confined animal operations, they're so prolific is the problem. And if we basically ban all of these, we're banning farms regardless, because they're not going to be working the same way that they do now. They're going to reduce in numbers simply because we've now made certain practices illegal. It's no longer basically efficient for those companies. Now they have to provide all this space, all this.
It's less efficient.
Much less efficient, because if you look at like how our food, the food supply, is set up. Anytime you go to a restaurant and you order, these meat products, you're basically ordering one from a factory farm. Right?
Yes.
Isn't it true that like basically like 99% of pigs?
I've called a lot of them. Yes.
So how is it? What's going to be the result if we push all of this for the welfare? Aren't we just going to end up with a system where we still have animal agriculture? Sure, maybe the animals are better off, but they're still enslaved. They're still exploited. They don't get to, we're controlling them. We're exerting force over them, and then at the end, we still traumatize them right before they die. Right. So wouldn't that, even though maybe that is preferable, isn't that still wrong? And shouldn't we really just push for the full abolition? Shouldn't we? Because doesn't the full abolition include all the stuff you're talking about? We can't cut off can't we? Hold on. We can't cut off the horns of of cows if we're going to not let them be farmed, right? We're not going to have pigs and farrowing crates if we don't let them, be farmed. And if we push, and the other thing is too, wouldn't you say that in the type of world we live in, you have to ask for more than what you want? Like,
no.
Well, when you go to sell a vehicle, do you ask for exactly what you want, or do you ask for more than what you want?
I've never sold a vehicle.
Oh, okay. Well, but
yes, I know what you mean.
Okay.
There are some cases with vehicles or yard sailing where you can you barter.
You ask for more, and the reason you ask for more is because they're never going to give you what you want. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna ask for, hey, let's get rid of these farrowing crates, and all they're gonna do is make them like an inch bigger, and then everybody's gonna celebrate. And that's what my point is, that if we change the definition, that politicians could start calling themselves veganism as soon as they vote for an inch of more space in the farrowing crate, like because they're giving these animals moral consideration, and it's I guess it's barely moving the ball, but it's at least going in that direction. Wouldn't that still wouldn't we still see that as like, hey, you basically didn't do anything, you didn't do enough for these animals, and if we don't push for pure abolition, they're not going to take us, like they're not even going to get the ball rolling on this welfare stuff. I don't understand, because don't we have to tell the politicians like, hey, this whole thing is wrong? And obviously they can't overnight abolish it, because that would probably cause chaos. But if you are trying to slowly phase it out through a political means and a message, that message has to be strong. It can't be it can't be open to such negotiation that 1 inch more of farrowing a 1 inch more space in a farrowing crate is acceptable. That's very unacceptable, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
yeah. That one thing. If that's all that changed in a certain amount of time, I would feel like we didn't see much progress for sure.
And then let's continue down this, because like let's say it's you know how they what do? Rip the teeth out of pigs, right?
Yeah, and the tails. Yeah.
And so they're in the, so the reason they're doing that stuff is because these pigs are basically going crazy in these spaces, and they're attacking each other. So if we suddenly went the welfare way and banned those practices, who's to say that they wouldn't just, now the pigs aren't just going to start biting each other and biting their tails, because they're still in these confined practices, aren't
Well, yeah,
they?
we shouldn't make stupid calls. So if they're going to be confined in an area where if they had the tails and the teeth, they're going to cannibalize each other, then we wouldn't want to remove the idea of the tails and the teeth, and as Rich here says, and the balls. Um, Although I don't know if they cannibalize the balls. In fact, I think they remove the balls because that makes the meat taste different. Um, but you would want to you would have to change it all at once. You'd have to say that you're either you start at having them have larger areas to where they won't want to cannibalize each other, and then move to the next things, or do each of those things at once: the teeth, the tails, and the areas they're in. Because I'm guessing free range pigs don't have an issue with that. I'm guessing they have their teeth and they have their tails, and but I'll look into that for sure.
I would guess that too, but then aren't we saying, hey, we're going to ban 99% of the way the farming is done right now?
That'd be great,
Which
right?
is, it would be, but like, aren't we acknowledging that basically what we're doing is we're putting we're putting this agricultural system into a smaller, we're putting it into a smaller place, but now we're probably losing our ability to actually abolish it, right? Because people are still going to have the demand for this, even now, and even more now, because they can feel ethical about what they're buying. Because
No, if we have a good argument for it, then we should be able to like think of something you don't like. Tell me something you don't like that you think should be illegal. That's not connected to animals.
oh, that's not connected to animals. I would say, like, obviously allow things like free speech and whatnot. Or you said something I don't like. So like any attempts to, you know, keep people from speaking up, you know, that it doesn't even have to be like not even in the United States. I mean, other countries too, you know, they don't have First Amendment rights.
So let's say in the US, let's say it was illegal to use racial slurs, and it was illegal to talk bad about a religion. Okay. So we wouldn't say that we want there to be more things not allowed to say, just so we can have more reason to say that we want complete free speech. We would want as much as possible. With your approach, which might be similar to even letting farmers cut off the legs of cows, I'm sure you've heard that hypothetical I had. Anything that we can keep adding that is legal to harm animals, your claim is that that's fine. Let's keep doing that. That must be your claim, unless you're not looking at a future timeline. That we don't want to fight for each of those individual things. So that is fine. We can cut off the legs of cows. So same thing with free speech. If we don't have total free speech, then we say, okay, what's best is actually, if they're going to not allow us to do this next thing, we can't talk bad about old people. And then the next thing you'd go, yeah, let's keep having these. I hope the government keeps making these things illegal so everybody can be so mad that we end it all at once. No, we would say, let's get whatever we can get. What's more likely? Can we get the blaspheme law removed, or can we get the racial slurs law removed? And we focus on that. We get it removed. And once that's removed, then we go, okay, now this one. You can fight for it all at once. You can say we should have total free speech, just like I do think we should have total free speech, and I think that animals should not be harmed. And I can declare that all I want. I don't have to focus every second of my time on the welfare. But do you see the point? Do you at least agree somewhat?
Well, what I'm getting from this is that basically what you're saying is that the single issues are okay. Like basically within the scope of the animal rights movement, if you focus on, for example, just trying to ban fur, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. And now here's the thing, I'm not necessarily against like the single issues. I'm just for the vegan message and not for the welfare message, because you can still do you can still make these welfare claims. You can still tell, non-vegans about how bad these factory farms are. But at the end of the day, when they ask you what's the right thing to do,
Mhm.
there's an answer for that, right? And it's the
Yes.
vegan message. It's the
No,
one that it is right now.
I agree, but let's go with that free speech thing real quick. If right now the only two things you couldn't do is racial slurs and blaspheme, and let's say we knew for sure that not for sure, but we had a pretty good idea that we could get the racial slurs one removed, like in a reasonable time. But we had a guess that the blasphemy one was going to take a lot longer because let's say there's a lot of religious people in this country right now. Um, would you fight for the one that you thought you could change, or would you just say, I don't care about the individual ones, I want to demand complete free speech, and therefore both will probably last as long as the longest one would last?
Well, it's just the basis for the argument as to why you're trying to do either one is the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can certainly tailor your message, because like if you go, I don't know, to a pig farm and you're protesting a pig farm, the sign you carry might call out what's wrong with it that's
Mm-hmm.
specifically related to pigs. Same thing if you go to, a protest fur or something like that. But basically the idea is, if you have the entirety of your rights-based message in one box, this box called veganism, and and remember, we're talking about the definition of veganism and whether or not it should be changed. I think the way, because we're not necessarily disagreeing about like the fur thing, and because I would still say you can, as a vegan, go out and protest those things. You can go,
Mm-hmm.
you can protest the lack of welfare, but at the end of the day, when somebody's asking you, hey, what do you think? You have to tell them that it's wrong in general. We have to
100%.
abolish it, and that's why the current definition of veganism, basically the exclusion. Here, I'll just kind of go over it real quick. So the seek to exclude as far as possible and practicable all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for yada yada. And basically anything. You can't use animals for any product if it's if it's not practical or possible, or sorry,
Mm-hmm.
if it is practical and possible to go without it. I mean, obviously, in all cases, it's I would say it's probably possible and practical to go without it. We're not on a desert island here,
Mm-hmm.
trying to survive eating bugs or something like that. We're basically in a position where we have we have the platform within our country and all these other Western countries to be able to tell people like, hey, because we're not taught from birth why exploitation is wrong. People don't just know that. They're taught that exploitation is okay, and that's
Mm-hmm.
really the crux of this, because
In general, or you just mean to animals in our current society?
uh, I want to say to animals, because we do on some level recognize it for humans, and if we recognize it for animals, the great thing is that we get to actually recognize that within ourselves, and we understand it truly for what those rights are that we would like for ourselves as well. If we extend that to animals and we say, hey, they shouldn't be exploited, we shouldn't be cruelly abusing them in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form. And parents have been teaching you for your entire life, like, no, this is how it works, this is how it works, this is how it works. We need a definition of veganism that basically points at exactly what's wrong, and it's the exploitation and it's the cruelty. It's not just the fact that, like, if we had all these happy farms that suddenly think everything's okay.
Yeah,
The message has to be strong.
I
um
ag-
and
yeah, I
and so
agree. I so as far it's very complicated. So in my mind, especially when talking about the philosophy of it, you know how in mine that I wrote up, I had that simple extends moral consideration. Like,
mhm.
I guess I view like a philosophy as kind of a longer description. So maybe it's not best to refer to that one sentence as the entire definition and then the rest just exist. I don't even know if a philosophy needs a definition. It just so if I was describing it, it wouldn't be that you can't feel like you align with this if you don't fit any of the categories. Like, so for example, I think owning animals of any kind is wrong. I think owning a dog is a wrong thing and it would be best to not do it. So I get that in some cases the best thing we can do, because we've domesticated them and because of rescuing an animal and viewing it better to give it a great life than to put it down or something like that, that somebody might view, even though this thing is wrong, it's best in the moment. So I would want my description, if I was just writing out of like a one-page thing describing like what I think veganism is about, to go to all extremes of exploitation, all the different things about not owning animals. And it wouldn't even have to word it like that. It would just be that if you broke it down, the exploitation would have to be considering dogs. But I wouldn't want everybody that's thinking about, like when most people say like they kind of align with, I don't know if most people say they subscribe to a philosophy, align with it. I mostly align with the political philosophy of libertarianism, but I don't align with everything to do with it. But when it comes to the idea of veganism, if somebody felt like in this world that we live in, if there was not exploitation of animals, you wouldn't have to have this philosophy talking about exploitation of animals. Because the world we live in, you have this philosophy where people can go, yeah, I totally agree with that. And somebody could own a dog and treat that dog really well, and everything else in their life is vegan like. And they can still like want to fight for this thing. They can still want this world to change. They could even want they could even want all domesticated animals to go extinct, but they're going to raise the one they have. So I don't know exactly
Well,
what to say.
are you saying like they bought a dog from a breeder?
It doesn't matter. I don't think a
Well,
dog should be locked in.
well, veganism usually takes the position that, hey, if you're adopting an animal from a shelter, that animal's like in a cage, and if you let that animal just run around freely, it's going to die. It's probably going to suffer out there, starve and stuff, or get hit by a car, and it's extremely traumatic. So we humans have already, and it's not even us because we're not the breeders, but the people who bred these in the past, they created basically an ethical dilemma that we humans have to bear the responsibility of. We created this problem. We have to take responsibility for it. So in adopting animals, that is generally seen as okay because, hey, you're basically giving this dog or this cat a life where it's going to actually be, respected and be your companion, and you're taking care of it. And we're basically trying to, in some way, solve the dilemma of animals being bred. We need to stop that. Obviously, we need to like that. That almost could be like number one, single issue. Vegans go out and stop animals from being bred, like dogs and cats and things like that. But basically, if you're now on the other side of that, if you're trying to say, oh well, they bought the dog, right? That's not vegan because they. But let's say everything else in their life, right? Well, you can be considered. Hey, you're like right on the edge there. Like you really almost got it, in your head what veganism is about, but you don't quite understand it because you basically supported the exploitation of an animal. So they didn't quite get the message, but they're doing a good job because they're in every other respect, they're not consuming animal products or buying leather or anything like that. But like when we're talking about what is it that people are agreeing with when they're not vegan, and they still lean that way. The way I usually describe that is I say they have a sentiment or they agree with the sentiment. Like I can agree with the sentiment of libertarianism, right? And I'm not a libertarian whatsoever. I'm like way far left, way more left than that. And but yet I can still look at libertarianism and go, I understand what it is that's appealing about this, but I don't agree with it. And I think that's what most people are doing when they're not vegan, but they agree, with veganism. They're really just agreeing with the sentiment of it. In the same way, when I hear arguments for antinatalism, I can agree with the sentiment because I can understand the points that they're making, but I don't agree with the solution. The so given ethical principle or way to live by that they subscribe to. Because in antinatalism, like I don't agree with all of it. I don't agree with certain premises about life that they have. So I would never find myself or define myself as an antinatalist. And even though I agree with the sentiment, I would never want somebody to label me as a antinatalist, because I don't believe that. I believe maybe something similar to that, but not that exactly. And it's the same way with like the vegan message, is that, if you're going to be calling yourself a vegan, please make sure that you're doing what the definition of veganism is, because it's like, with basically the idea is that the moral position of veganism is the life source that enables the success of the movement. Because if we didn't have the moral position, if all we had, say, because like we could make several different arguments for veganism that are not moral. You could make an environmental argument. You could make a practical argument, an economic argument. You can make all these different arguments to support veganism, but if you don't have the moral position in there, the entirety of the movement basically loses its fire. And the fire is that moral side. That's what powers people like Joey Carbstrong or Ed Winters or anybody who's out there on the streets doing activism or even online. Mm-hmm. It empowers them because they realize, like, hey, this isn't about me. Like, I have to stand up for the animals. It's about them. Right. And that's where that fire comes from. And if we change the definition of veganism, then we're going to have several vegans who didn't earn that title. They're still exploiting animals.
How often do you think the definition of veganism should change?
Only when there is a actual problem. And so, for example, if aliens came down from, I don't know, a UFO landed on the White House lawn, and they were like, let's say they were plant people, right? Well, we would include them in our arguments for veganism. We'd be like, we can't eat these sentient plant people. You know what I mean? Like, that would be wrong because they're sentient. And so the definition of veganism, we would have to update it to be like, okay, it's not just animals. It's also, we found out
aliens,
plant people exist. So we have to consider them too because they're sentient. So the basis of the moral argument is still the same. We slightly change the definition to include them because we want inclusive language. We want to be able to make sure that everybody is accounted for, on the planet. That's kind of why I think the possible and practicable part of that definition is okay to have in there, is because like people are going to wonder like, oh, well, I can't be vegan because my medicine is made for this animal product. And now I might as well not be vegan at all. But, and they can lead themselves down that path because of one, dumb thing that society has put, forced upon them, because society could choose not to use those products. And then we would, obviously we'd all be vegan if society chose that, but basically society doesn't choose that. So we just, that part of the definition is it's okay. But basically, the whole point of this is that we have a rights-based message. So that way we can be united together under the moral position. And veganism is basically, it's representing the core of protections that we offer as vegans to these sentient animals. So like if the plant aliens came down from the UFOs and then the US military suddenly captured them and they were like, okay, we're going to breed these plant alien humans and eat them, we would be like, no, that's wrong, because we have a strong moral set of protections that we grant them. And if you don't grant them, you're wrong. Right.
But if the government did not listen to us and they bred them into existence, and then they bred more to farm them, at that point, us vegans would not care if they hurt them in any possible ways. We would just let them do any possible things they want and never focus on it.
That would become part of the fuel. So we already have the fire. The fire is animal rights, and obviously in this case, sentient plant aliens, right? So so that's the fire. The fuel is they're being mistreated, right? So that's the fuel we throw on the fire to say, this is why you need to do the animal rights, because we can't trust just every single person.
It'd be good? We
What's
should
that?
save up a bunch of money and hire somebody to go get a job at a factory farm and have them like just torture animals but catch it on camera. That way we could have that to use to fight the
It's
problem.
got to be legitimate, because if you start faking stuff like that, then people turn around and go, the vegans are doing this themselves. Obviously, they don't care. And that they'd be right. You'd be a hypocrite. And so you
Right?
can't be a
Yeah.
hip. You can't fight for rights and be a hypocrite. It's just that's
Yeah.
why, like, if people want animals to not be confined to these cages, you can't
Mm-hmm.
pay for them to be there. You can't go to the restaurant and
Mm-hmm.
order the pig or the chicken or even the cow. They're in these positions that you do not like, you do not agree with. So own up to it, own up
Yeah.
to the reality, and make decisions that are ethical, because that is what's going to keep this world sane. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be anything else. Morality is kind of like the only thing we're hinging on that's keeping
Yeah.
society together. And I'm hoping that we can, if we extend these rights to animals, we're going to start to realize that, hey, we humans have rights. Like,
Yeah.
most
I
people
just
don't realize how many rights we actually have, because we're especially when those people are like taking the rights away from other sentient beings.
mm-hmm.
It kind of basically justifies that happening to them, because they're already like committing
Mm-hmm.
these atrocities by, or at
Oh.
least paying for these atrocities. And then at the same time, they go home and they complain about how they're being exploited as workers or whatever, and or exploited by their government or whatever. And it's like, you don't even give rights to these sentient beings who
Yeah.
feel pain, who
Oh,
are, yeah, you see what I'm saying.
I guarantee you, if there was human slavery in the U.S. still, and it involved all the different issues that we see with animals, like we don't have tails to remove, we could do ear docking. Um, all the human rights people would get all that shit stopped, even if they couldn't end the slavery itself.
Well, hold on.
Unlike us vegans, who the majority don't give a shit, and I'm hoping that will change. Um, but
Well, okay. Let me bring up an example of something
yeah,
that I think is actually still happening today
okay,
in the United States. So I'm pretty sure there is indentured servitude of immigrants that are brought over. Yes, in Florida. I'm pretty. Let me do a quick search here. So I'm pretty sure it's tomato farms.
I know people come over on visas to work and then go back. And
Yeah,
then
but here's
there's
what happened. It's like debt. So they basically give them a place to live, and then they indebt them, so that they have to pay the same people who are giving them that job, and they're supposed to be able to get out of this cycle. But there's been reporting that basically says that they have not. And so, okay, so there's a lot of stuff online. I just look up
yeah.
Florida tomato slavery and you'll find it. But
Okay, yeah, yeah.
basically, here's the deal. If we know this is true, are you going to say, "Oh no," and it's I'm pretty sure it's indebted servitude, so they can't get out of it. Would you just be like, "Oh, well, we just need to give them, a better place to live. We need to make sure that they're not
Mm,
that the people who own these farms aren't
No,
coming over and abusing them?" Or would you be like, "Hey, let's just abolish this, because
well,
this indebted bullcrap is
yeah.
not acceptable"?
Yeah, it would depend on what's happening. So if this was a legal thing to do, and also the people that they were indebted to could start tattooing them however they want, and they could have sex with them, and they could do all these different wild things, then we should fight for their rights to not be
Well,
tattooed, to not have the sex with, and all this different stuff, while at the same time saying this whole thing should end. Is it going to end in any time we can imagine right now? If it's not, let's focus on the things we could end, but also constantly talking about, because I don't know about you, but I talk about, like, every week I probably talk about at least 50 issues with people. I don't have to have it pinpointed down to one specific thing. I, like, in one day I'll talk to like two people for an hour about animal rights, and then two different people about abortion. Like, I could talk all day about all kinds of things. It's not animal welfare or animal abolition, or not animal abolition, but animal farming abolition. It's easily both, and I would guess it's probably best to do both. I actually wonder. I want to do a calculation that obviously I couldn't know the answer to, and I want to find out if it would be better to go vegan your whole life or to not go vegan at all and to fight for animal welfare. Something tells me that if you took every vegan that exists, and if we all stopped being vegan, not that we should, but if we did, and we all fought to change something like dehorning and made that illegal, that we would have a larger impact on animals, just in
Okay.
general.
Let's just take this. I think this is good. So we're in the Congress, and basically we're talking to our we're debating somebody on this in Congress, right? Let's just say you're telling them we shouldn't dehorn these cows, and they're saying we have to because otherwise they're going to harm each other. What is your response?
I'm trying to remember. I just did a talk with somebody about dehorning cows, and I'm trying to remember the exact reason the dehorning happens. Is it harm? It might be harm. I can't remember.
We can pick a different one. What do you know more about?
No, it's fine. I don't know.
Uh,
I know very little about a lot of things. But yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know if I would say anything. I mean, I would hope somebody that had something good to say would say something. But even without anything to say, I think
but we've elected you. You have to represent us. You have
Why,
to,
thank you.
and the animals.
What's
your response to them?
I think it would just be perfectly fine to say that it shouldn't happen, even if there is some harm caused.
Hold on. Isn't the point of dehorning them is because it causes harm?
It's probably because it can cause harm. Let's see. It's going to increase the risk of injury to farm workers. Let's see. Horses, dogs, and other cattle. Dehorning animals are far easier to handle in transport and command higher prices. Let's see.
It looks like it's to prevent injury.
Yeah. And it seems like it's mostly injury to farm workers.
Well, I see that, but I also see herd mates on here too. So other cows too. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'd be curious to see what the reasoning that was for that. If it was only in factory farms where they're in small cages, or, I mean, I guess cows in general are the most free range of all the animals, so their cages aren't too small. But okay, fine.
Let's just do pigs. Let's go to pigs.
Let's just do branding.
Okay, branding. Okay, so you want base. I don't even know what the point of branding is. Do you?
Well, the branding would be to know where your herd is at. If your herd goes up to another herd, then it's just showing that you own it, like that's yours. Which is probably why they prefer to do that than to do like the ear tags, because somebody could steal your cattle and just remove the ear tag where you can't remove the branding.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'm pretty sure they did something very similar to slaves.
My point to illustrate here is that some of these things they do because they're trying to keep the animals from harming each other. That's why I brought up the whole dehorning thing, and then like why they cut the tails and pull the teeth out, right? Or cut the teeth. So like if you're going to argue for these things, what's going to happen is in that argument you're going to end up at a point where they're like, you're basically abolishing all of these farms, right?
Sure.
Because they cannot basically have all of these animals here. So why wouldn't you just say that instead of trying to get the welfare? Well,
I do say that. Like I don't.
No, I'm saying why is that not the main focus? Why is it that you're going to use this strategy of attack the welfare things to
It's the
create
same
an
reason
inefficiency that reduces animal agriculture, but it doesn't actually abolish it for the minority. The majority won't be able to afford it in this case, but it will still be an ongoing practice. And I'm thinking that you're going to be met with the same exact resistance.
Sure.
Because you have all these people being represented by these politicians who are we want to get you the meat, and you have to convince them it's wrong.
I got you. Okay, two things. It's the same reason why Lincoln told that freaking senator that I can't think of the name of, that was telling him that they should fight for not only ending slavery when the lead up to the Emancipation Proclamation, but that also when slavery's ended, that black men should have the right to vote. And Lincoln said, if we go for both of those things, we will not win this. We will not get the votes. We need to end slavery, and then we'll get them the right to vote. So it's the exact same reason. So slavery barely got passed to end slavery, Emancipation Proclamation, and then about 20 years later, black men got the right to vote. That's because things happen in baby steps.
You should look at the history a little closer, because black people were still slaves. Even after slavery was ended, they had debt peonage. Where
that's even more of my point.
They would I don't.
My point is
Here's
these things happen in baby steps. Even if we stop all the horrible practices and it goes to like a regenerative farm type thing, there still will be farms that are going to break the rules and do these horrible things. And then if we stop farms completely, there will be people that have animals like secretly hidden in areas, and there will always be when you.
And
change
I understand
something,
that. I understand that,
Yeah.
but we have to be careful, because what the thing about history is that we tend to look at it like it's a linear. We're always going to go more progressive, more progressive, more progressive. But if you look at history, it's gone back and forth. People,
Sure.
we could easily, in this freaking dumb country, start being prejudiced against people because certain politicians have it out for them, right? And it's so ridiculous. And here's the thing: we have to argue the full message. We have to be like, you can't have any slavery. You can't have any of this debted in servitude. You can't have these just unjust systems that create people that are not free, and because we value that. We want that for all of us. We don't want any exceptions, with that are unjustified. You have to be able to justify these things, because
Are you telling me
otherwise
that-
the morality is going to get away from you.
Are you telling me that when the Senate voted in 1863 to decide if they were going to free slaves in the country, that if it was up to you, after Lincoln informs you, hey, if we go for all this, we're going to lose, you would still have gone for all of it? You would have risked losing it to get the voting rights?
No, because I already told you that it's not about the single issues. It's about the entirety of the message that backs those, right?
No, that's what I'm telling you.
So we're in agreement that the idea is, if you're going to argue for things like, hey, let's abolish fur, the message that you're going to use is not basically like, I don't know, oh yeah, you can still have these animals in cages, but you just can't cut their fur off. Like, that's not the message. The message is, hey, this whole thing is wrong. The moral message is what's important.
Yes. So the people that wanted slaves to be freed and them to have the right to vote, they could tell all the people they want that. But when it comes down to deciding what's going to be voted on and what you're trying to push, what you think is possible to happen, are you going to say that you want to put some focus on this thing that is possible to happen? Like in 1863, slavery would have been a focus. Or would you have said, I will stand firm?
Yeah, but you're making assumptions that these things are possible. Like the
What's
whole
possible?
cutting out teeth or getting rid of farrowing crates. Do you really think that's possible?
If it's
possible.
If it's not possible, then I'm completely wrong, and that's fine. I'm saying if it is possible. And that's the thing. This is actually very comparable to slavery, because obviously when people in the South were told that they wanted to end slavery, they would have said, like, if you end slavery and I don't have all these 100 slaves picking cotton and working these different things in the field, I'm not going to be able to have all this production. I'm going to have to pay people. I'll have less workers and I'll get less out of it. And the same thing where if you tell people, like, okay, you can't dehorn the bulls, so there's going to be some issues where you have to have less bulls to make them go crazy or whatever. You can't brand them, so you might lose some. You can't do tail docking. Tail docking, I think, is to have. I think the main reason is in dairy that you want to prevent issues with milk and the tails being so close to where the milk comes out. That these different things, or even the cages, the amount of pigs crammed into a small cage, they might say, "Oh, if you do this, it's going to cost me way more money. We're going to have to charge more for animals, for the meat at the store, and all these different things." And it would be just like slavery, where if you can convince enough people to fight for a certain cause, people that still want to eat animals and might be willing to pay a little more to eat animals, but they would want to fight to not have this certain thing happen. Then yeah, I think the fight's perfectly reasonable and perfectly likely to happen. I think it's more likely to end tail docking and dehorning than it is to end all of animal farming. Which one of those is going to end first?
Let's bring it back to the slave or abolition of slaves. Then, so if all these people in the South who were in support of slavery, if you were just telling them like, "Oh, hey, that that shack you gave them is not." I don't know, that's confinement, or when you whip them, you're causing them harm. You're causing them stress. Please don't do that. If you're passing that message on to them, you're leaving out the important part. You're leaving out the part where you tell them this is wrong. The whole thing is wrong. If you don't tell them it's wrong, how are they supposed to know it's wrong? No. You're going to only tell them that, we just need to treat them better.
I think you keep forgetting that I'm saying myself and anybody else that has this thought, which should be everyone, is that you would always tell the full message. You always tell the full message and do what is best. The idea is that if we could magically know what's best, we would do it, right? Even people that disagree with me on focus on welfare, they said if they knew that the focus on welfare was best, they would do it. They just don't think it's best. But yeah, you want whatever's best, which is probably why it's half the things I talk about aren't best for veganism. Anybody that might likely cut out meat, dairy, and eggs, if they hear the idea of thinking that you shouldn't own pets, they'd probably be like, "Oh, I'm out of here."
They need to understand it. It's not, if they're out of here, you need to challenge them on that. We got to get to the root, the core, the actual ethical belief that they have, because it's not the same to have moral consideration as it is to actually have a moral obligation. Those are two different things. If you assign people a title that is for moral consideration, basically you're going to make the definition of veganism useless. It's basically going to be this word that just gets thrown out there, kind of just like some of these words we're losing meaning for, like liberal. Like people don't even know what that word means, and they throw it around at you when you might not even be liberal, or socialist. They have no idea what these words mean. It's so dumb. I just not okay with that. I need people to use the right word. Okay. And when we're talking about veganism, contention 2, supporting these practices.
Actually, well, hold on. Sorry. Before you go to contention 2, I just wanted to clarify something. I feel like contention 1 and 3 are about the same, but maybe I missed something and I'll find out in a second. But really quick, you sort of answered me, but maybe not. When veganism started, and some people think that whoever creates a word, and whether it's for a philosophy or for actions or whatever, that it's that person's word, nobody can change it, whatever. Now you've said that you think it's worth changing when issues come up like that, like the alien one, and I agree with you. But I just want to point something out, and we learn new things every day, and I might learn even more. But from my understanding, the guy that founded veganism, founded the word vegan, his definition, what he told anybody that said, "What makes you a vegan?" He said, "If you eat a vegan diet, you are a vegan." That was the definition of veganism at first. Now, 2 years later, Leslie Cross came in and essentially booted out what's his face. I can't think of his name right now. And then Leslie Cross had this idea of giving it this definition, a short definition that basically said not exploiting animals. And so that's that. When a lot of people talk about the original, they're talking about that, even though before that was just eating a vegan diet. And it might have had its reasonings, but the idea was that veganism is about this diet, not the other things. And then Leslie Cross said it's about exploitation. So I know a handful of people that hate the current definition that me and you are discussing, and they think the Leslie Cross one. And then essentially whoever was the president of the Vegan Society, every like 5 to 10 years, it kind of did a back and forth thing, kind of like England's monarchs going back and forth between Catholic and Christian. But they did a back and forth thing where, so like in the 70s, there was a period of time where it had a focus on just the diet and they didn't want to scare away a lot of people. And then when a new section of people got in, then it was this big focus on all these different things. And then the amount of people that were part of the vegan society like dropped because everybody was scared off of this stuff. And I'm not making any claim about the scared off thing. That's fine. I just want to make sure that maybe I understand you and that we're on the same page, that there's nothing wrong with the fact that in the 80s, they made the definition that we're talking about, and that's still the definition. But I would say that it's reasonable now, if we're saying when we add stuff like the alien thing, do you think it would be reasonable to add into this definition something to do with sentience, considering it could even have a caveat that says that it could
change the word animals to sentient beings. I mean, that would cover it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because at a point where you would imagine every animal is sentient, then you might as well have the definition be what it is. But as we learn more and as we find out about like bivalves not being sentient, then I would say that having the sentient being element in there would be good. And because I know a lot of people that will say that they don't care whatsoever about insects, driving cars, all that kind of stuff, but they think it's non-vegan to eat a bivalve. And I would guess that from your knowledge, would you agree with me that it is likely that insects are more sentient than or more likely sentient than bivalves?
I definitely think they're more likely sentient, but I don't know that bivalves are truly non-sentient. I've never looked at it, so I'm not going to make a claim either way. I'm sure they're not, but like the point is that obviously we care about the sentient animals, not the non-sentient ones. That said, though, that's not the same as like, oh, hey, we have a dead animal that we hit on our drive, and now we're going to eat it. Because in my mind, that's still exploitation, because that animal, if you go to eat it, you're now giving yourself a subconscious motivation to basically hit more animals on the road.
What if you didn't have? I mean, I guess it's subconscious, so you can't.
It's subconscious because you see where it's the gaining part. And we're biasing ourselves because we're eating it, right? So like it's the gaining part. Now bivalves, there's nobody home, but when you hit that animal down the street, like you've taken away a sentient life, and basically now you eat it and you gain from it. You're gonna subconsciously motivate yourself, like. You're going to be okay with that. And it's still not okay. Like you still have to be very careful to try to not hit these animals that are on the road, even though eventually you probably will. Right. But you still have to guard against that. You have to be conscientious enough to not let that happen. But if you don't think it's unethical, you will let it happen. And then the sentient animals will unfortunately, they'll lose their life as a result. And then if you eat them, that's just like, how is that going to look to other people who are driving down the road and they see you pull this animal and start skinning it on the side of the road?
Would you call them not vegan, or would you just say that this is a conversation worth having, hoping that people will change their mind?
If you're hitting the animal and then you're eating it, that's not vegan, because I still consider that, even though it's not the same exploitation as like the animal's alive, you still killed the animal on accident, but then you proceeded to gain from it.
So if you knew somebody that aside from that did not eat meat, dairy, eggs, and they did not buy leather, any of the stuff, no makeup with the products, any of that stuff, and they were the most vegan possible, but they did that, and you were chatting with somebody, would you tell them like, oh, you thought they were vegan? They're not vegan. Like you would declare that they are not vegan. I would say,
well, there's at a certain point when you get really, really close to the line, other people from the outside won't be able to differentiate. If you don't have these hard and fast rules, like basically like no animal product free, right? Like hard and fast rule. If you don't have that in there, then it's going to start to confuse the optics from the outside, and people aren't going to be able to tell what veganism is anymore. And And I don't know what they would think, about it. Maybe they would still call that person vegan because they wouldn't know that they're actually like driving and hitting, animals and then eating those animals. I would say that's very not vegan to do. I would say that all that person has to do is not do that. It's not hard to not eat the animal that you hit on the side of the road, and that's all it takes to be vegan. I mean, that person turning vegan is a lot easier than, somebody who eats these animals every single day intentionally. I'm sorry, that would still be intentional, but they're obviously more intentioned. But basically, the definition of veganism, right? Like seeks to exclude these animal products. We're seeking to exclude them. Now, if you're going to bring up the whole bivalve thing because they're not sentient, I understand that. Because if they're truly not sentient, then yeah, maybe it makes sense to be like, okay, we're actually against the sentient animals, right? We're still maintaining the same, basically the same origin. We're doing the same practices as the original people who started the movement, and we can't suddenly just start throwing people into the mix and being like, oh, you hit this animal and then you ate the animal, like you're a vegan. It's confusing. I can't wrap my mind around how that person would be vegan, because they're eating these dead animals that were once sentient. That even though it was an accident, now you're trying to take their flesh from them.
We just have to figure out so many people just feel so many different ways. Maybe you're right, but yeah, that seems wild to me. Like, I agree with a lot of your thoughts, but to have like a bunch of people, if we have like 1 million vegans and 1,000 of them think like roadkill's fine, and 5,000 of them think bivalves are fine, and all these different people think these different things. I just obviously we need to have something that would make somebody clearly is not this thing. If somebody's like, oh, I don't care about animals at all, I don't even think they feel anything, but I'm a vegan.
Well, here's the reason why I think it's still, the definition highlights what I'm saying is the case, is because if it's true that bivalves don't have any sentience, then you can't exploit them and you can't be cruel to them, right?
No, I agree. I think
because there's nobody home, there's nobody there.
Yeah. No, I agree, but there are, and I agree, and that's a good part of the definition. There are a lot of vegans that will say because they are classified as animal, that's it for them, because they're not thinking of it in a philosophical way of, they're not thinking about why they don't do it. They can just
might, because I mean, I don't know much about bivalves, but they still have like signals, like, I mean, like, nervous system type stuff.
I think I've heard that they have some kind of like nerve ganglia or something, but they don't have a brain. They don't have a central nervous system.
Neither do lobsters. Lobsters don't have a brain, right? They just have a...
Yeah, and I heard that it's not officially known. Like some people, I've heard even vegans say that they're not against eating lobster, and that it's just one of those things where it's unknown, but scientists lean towards that they're sentient.
Well, obviously, when we're looking at like the behaviors, like the one is moving and the other is just sitting there like a plant. I mean, I actually I might be wrong. Maybe the bivalves do move and do things like that. I think what the position has been for a long time is to use the precautionary principle, not to approach this line, because we want to be sure that what we're eating is not in any way, shape, or form sentient. Like we wouldn't want to eat bugs, right? So if this thing has a little bit of sentience, enough that it might be close enough to a bug, we might be like, oh, shoot, we shouldn't obviously exploit them because there's a they there, and so that's the precautionary principle in action. I probably would just leave it at that. We don't really need to cross this line, because if the point of the hard and fast rule is when we go to a restaurant and we tell people, what do you eat? And we say animal-free products. If you start saying, oh, we can eat mussels.
Yeah.
And you're like,
well, you could ask for the vegan
eat them. And then what's going to happen is that line is going to just keep getting pushed and pushed and
Oh,
pushed and pushed. And
yeah.
people, because they're going to be like, oh, that thing's not sentient. Oh, that thing's not sentient. If we just use the animal rule, we know we
Yeah.
have our bases covered. We don't need bivalves for our diet. We're just making this rule that we're not going to suddenly have loopholes for. If we have
I know
loopholes, everybody's going to use those loopholes.
I know what you mean, but if we had like 20% of animals were not sentient, then it would be a different story. And it's just complicated. But I honestly don't give a shit about how a restaurant labels things. And I know what you mean. I think when somebody asks for a vegan menu, the vegan menu should not include bivalves. They could also separately order something involving bivalves. But yeah, restaurants should probably make it simple. But I honestly don't care about restaurants. But I had a thought and it left me. It's all good. If it comes back to me, I'll let you know.
Okay. So as far as like changing the definition to your definition, we are definitely eroding the core of the moral stance that we take. That is what I'm saying here. And it's not like we can't change this definition slightly and be like, let's not call them animals, let's call them sentient beings. And then technically we're more accurate. But in my opinion, we still don't need to do that. We have it. Everything is covered. It's all covered still. Even though some people like the original definition more because maybe it's more accurate, we still have all our bases covered. We're still pushing the same message. But as soon as you change it from a moral obligation to a moral consideration, now you've basically broken the moral stance that we have, because it's not just considering them. You know, it's more than that. It's much more than that. And if you're not pushing for the entire message, that's when you're going to start to get into trouble with the people who don't understand the message, because they're not even going to get the message. You're not even going to give it to them. You're going to give them some subpar version of this message, this moral message that's like, hey, if you just treat these animals with more respect, or if you give them these ideas that give them a false sense of moral righteousness or correctness, we're going to disengage them from veganism. They're going to start becoming welfareists without even knowing it and calling themselves vegan. And then now you have another problem. You have to reel that back in. And I don't want our definition to go like to this moral consideration place, because it's not just a consideration. It's an obligation. You have to know that this is wrong. Well, and if you don't know it's wrong, you have to explain. It has to be explained to you.
It's not an
obligation. People don't just know these things.
It's not an obligation, and I don't even know if it should be an obligation. But here, I remember the thing I was going to ask you, and it might seem random and weird. But would you rather 100 people, let's say you talk to people and you convince them to go vegan, would you rather 100 people go vegan that eat insects, or 10 people go vegan that don't eat insects?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, honestly.
Okay.
What's your opinion on it?
I'm gonna make you know. Ready? Would you rather 1,000 people go vegan that eat insects, or 10 people go vegan that don't eat insects?
I'm not sure.
Would you rather 10,000?
You can, if you say a million, okay, fine.
The answer is yes. In my mind, I don't know the suffering of bugs, but if I got a large number,
bugs, aren't they missing the point?
Yes and no. That's the thing.
Because if all they care about is suffering, then the welfare message is really going to be appealing, isn't it? It's just going to be. And by the way, it's never. Besides the fact that the environment is going to force us to eliminate cow agriculture. Besides that fact, these animals are still going to be made available, and they're going to be called ethical and humane, and they're going to continue to push. You might be able to push more and more legislation, and then it's just going to be ethical and humane, and you're not going to have much more to change except to abolish it. And if
there's something to fight for, there's something to fight for.
Also, you said it's not an obligation. Why is it not an obligation?
Well, if you answered my question about the insects, I'd tell you.
Let's just say it's 1 million people who go vegan and eat bugs versus 10. And then I'll say okay, the 1 million that eat the bugs, maybe that's better. And it's still, I don't know, because I don't know what those 10 people are capable of.
The answer
I do know that those million will not
give
up the bugs because they're eating them, because they think it's right. That's why
they might not.
I don't know.
Yeah, but we're not giving up our cars, and we're hitting bugs. And as we've talked about with crop dust and all these different things,
Right.
there's the practicable element of it. It's all complicated. But what I will say is that I think the strongest defense of this would be the overeating thing that we've discussed, where if something that you know is not good for you, you have no need for it whatsoever. You're holding this donut in your hand, and it's a vegan donut. If you're holding it, you already purchased it, so you already put it in demand. But if you didn't purchase it yet, you're holding it at the store. The only thing that could make you consume that, if you had all knowledge, if you had knowledge of everything and what went into the harm to get you that donut, if you consume that, then the only reason for that is that you are choosing your desires over
Well,
the
yeah,
animals.
it's your desire to survive, right?
No, it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with survival.
Why? Because it's a donut.
Because it's a goddamn donut.
Well, okay,
yes.
so we had this conversation last time.
Yeah.
We talked about there is some. You have some. Like what you're talking about is the consequence of eating that, but you're not talking about the explicit action of what is right or wrong. You're saying that because this product, which if it didn't have any death associated with it or suffering associated with it, then it would be moral to eat that. But you're using
likely.
the consequence as what is not moral about it. But haven't we talked about, like, there's a threshold here. Like, basically you have some right to be able to eat more calories, because whether that's for hey, I need to gain more fat because when it comes this winter, I need to burn that fat. Like, I mean, do you see what I'm saying here? Like, we have some sort of bubble where it's acceptable.
It's complicated
for us to just be humans.
But I would
we don't
call
have
the
to.
excuse.
We don't have to strip every single layer of our humanity in order for us to be.
That's
vegans.
all I'm saying. I agree.
But it's still a obligation. You still have to be aware that, like, you can't just like start eating animals tomorrow. Like,
I mean, it's an obligation.
If you do that, you're not being moral. You're doing the wrong action. And so if you're doing the wrong action, what you're doing is you're perpetuating harm, and you're perpetuating a terrible mentality, because it's not just the animals who are going to suffer, it's humans too. And it's the people who slaughter these animals. Their psychology starts to develop or their mentality start to develop because they have to do this job, which is violent. And we don't want them to do that job that's violent. Even us who buys the product, we're saying it's okay every time we buy the product, because we're using our hard-earned dollars to make sure that thing is on the shelf next time we go to buy it. It's an obligation to not harm these animals because they are sentient and they deserve certain rights. And we know that they're capable of the same suffering we are. We would say for ourselves, hey, we need to not farm humans. We need to not exploit these humans with slavery. And yet we do it to the animals. Why are we not being consistent and saying, if it's a moral obligation for us, it's a moral obligation for them? Can you tell me why? Why is it different?
Why is it? It's a moral obligation for them.
Because we're using sentience to justify why we deserve rights, right? We have the right to not be exploited. We have the right to, not have cruelty done upon us. We know that's the case because we're sentient. We're going to experience this pain and suffering, right?
Yeah.
If we didn't have that sentience, then it wouldn't matter, but we do. And the animals have it too. So why is it more justified, for us to do something unnecessary to them?
Yeah, I don't think it is necessarily more justified. I think that there are problems in the world on all different things, humans, animals, whatever. And circumcision's one. Circumcision should be illegal, especially in a country like the U.S. Or any first world country. And somebody is having part of their body mutilated for absolutely no reason, usually for the reason of religion or parents wanting their kid to look similar to them. And I'm sure you talk about that to some people, and I talk about that to some people, but we're not like fighting in the streets for it. It's complicated. There are a lot of issues in the world, and we can fight for these issues the best we can.
Well, we have priorities, right? I mean, the vegan thing, the reason why there's such a great moral imperative there is because it's 90 billion land animals and close to 1 trillion, fish every year or something like that. So, I mean, the scale of that and the number of sentient beings that are being harmed is much greater than the amount of humans being harmed. And, we're still better off. We're still in some respects kind of free because we still have some like say in what we do. We don't have a whip being cracked on our back. We have basically, either you have a job or you have money, and you have to make it work. And that's like not the best system, but basically we're making it work. And it's not the same as like, when these animals are like being exploited, because they're being treated as slaves. They're being punished for just being their own species, like cutting them, branding them, whatever. So obviously there's a set of priorities there, and we need to go down the list and make sure. I think we should include all of these other issues that are important too, and talk about those too. But like when we're talking about the vegan message, if we want to be truly holding our own as far as like what's right, what's not right, we have to be extremely clear about that. Like I don't think we should obfuscate this by creating a definition of veganism that goes from obligation to consideration. We're losing the actual moral stance. And basically the idea here is,
maybe I need you to explain to me a little further about this obligation. Like, what do you mean by, like, so in my mind, so I feel like I want to cause as little harm as possible. I want to do what I can do to make the best lives for all sentient beings, including humans. But I guess I just don't think of the word like obligation there for myself. So tell me why I should like this word obligation.
Okay. So here's what I think is an obligation. An obligation is something that you cannot justify. Or sorry. So if you can't justify, like in the case of animals, right? If you can't justify eating them, then it is a moral obligation to not eat them. And these justifications have to be substantiated. So when I have a conversation with you, you actually have to convince me that it's justified. Because if you don't, then you're basically shirking your obligation. Now, everybody's going to have different opinions on what this comes out to be. But it is a mental faculty nonetheless. Even though there's no objective like book of rules over here that says, hey, animals cannot be exploited and us humans are bound by it or we die. Right? Like that, there's nothing objective like that. There's just a subjective sense that is a mental faculty that we need to exercise in our brain, because it's just like any other, high critical thinking skill that we have. Like, if I'm going to do math, I can't just, do math and then give you the wrong answer. I can put the wrong answer on a test and the teacher can go, mark that incorrect. And, there's a reason for that, because these things add up. These things like, especially in these higher mental faculties that we're trying to utilize here. And we're still learning to use this. It's just a crazy thing. But basically, so let me go through the argument here. It's contention too that you're talking about. So I'm going to go through all the premises. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So the mobility of veganism as a movement is empowered by its moral imperative to act on and advocate for veganism. So, for example, people like Joey Carbstrong or Ed Winters, they're moving and they're doing this outreach because the moral imperative. So the imperative is the weight of this thing. The imperative is the 90 billion land animals being, tortured and the fish being, taken out of the sea and all of the secondary impacts as a result of that. There's a huge imperative that weighs on our conscience that we know is, hey, there's something wrong here. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when we advocate for non-vegan solutions as vegan, it confuses the principle of veganism as not a moral obligation when it indeed is. And this follows up on premise 3 here. So losing the core message.
Hold on. I just want to. I think that's a good point to clarify something. So in my mind, how I view the vegan definition that's already there, and then how I view my ideas that we're discussing, I kind of view both those the same, as somebody can read that and go, oh, that's me, or oh, that's what I want to do, or I'm going to act upon these things. I don't view either of them at, let's see, so the imperative and the obligation element of it.
So take another moral thing. Take another moral thing. Do murder, for example. So in a murder, do you think anybody is morally obligated to not murder?
Is morally obligated to not murder? Yeah. If there's no good justification for a killing, then I think Are you morally obligated to? I mean, no, yes, and no. If I was out in nature and I really wanted somebody's water because I was so thirsty that I had to kill them to get their water, that's just part of life. If what's best to be in a society where if I were to do that exact same thing, I would go to jail for life. I agree that's
Okay.
best.
So remember what I said earlier. The moral obligation is that which you don't have. You have no justification, or sorry, you have a moral obligation when you have no justification, no
Oh,
substantiated,
okay, okay. Is that part
no
of the
subs.
definition?
Um, to be honest, it's since it's a two-word thing, moral obligation. There's a little bit more leeway in how you use it, right? But
Okay,
I'm going off my knowledge from like back in the day, being aware of like this Lincoln Douglas debate that took place in the National Forensic League. It was a debate thing, so
okay.
I'm
Well,
just kind of going off
let me
of
just
what
read.
they're.
Yeah, let me just read obligation real quick. So, noun, an act or course of action to which a person is morally or legally bound, a duty or commitment. Um, and
So
we're
and then moral obligation is the requirement to pursue what we believe is right and act accordingly, and it's a requirement, right? And so the way I'm telling you that this becomes a requirement is because you have zero, or you have no justification for it. Like, and a justification, it's not partially justified; it's always fully justified, right? It's got to meet that substantiated moral ground, and the only way we can evaluate that is within our mental faculty. So since we all have our own mental faculty, what's great about it is that it will mostly consistently play out the same. The thing that tends to create this distortion between different moral systems is what we have as self-bias. So if you're already eating meat, for example, you're going to attempt to utilize your moral system to justify it, but it won't be actually justified. It will be unjustified. Because when you see all these vegan outreach videos and they try to attempt to get to the root of why somebody thinks what they do, it never goes to like survival for them personally. It's always like taste, pleasure, or if it's maybe they're trying to use health, right? So typically people will try to use their health. If I don't have this, then I'm probably going to wither away and eventually like die early or something like that. But we already know that people have been vegan for long periods of time. And the thing is, since it's so different, people look at it and they go, oh, you're a vegan, you got sick. Oh, it must be your veganism. But how come they get to eat like these animal products and then, they're sick just because they're sick, not because, their diet all of a sudden. Like, I mean, and people like to connect the diet and the disease, and there's truth in that. But like at the end of the day, when we're talking about veganism, we're talking about several different food options. We're talking about all your macronutrients being met. We're talking about the law of thermodynamics. We're reaching all of our calories in a day, right? We're eating more frequently because we know plants have fiber and we have to eat more frequently because our digestion is slowed. And that's good for blood sugar and things like that. So it's like we know that vegan diets can work. We've been doing it for years, right? We don't need somebody to come and tell us like, oh, it's not healthy. Like, dude, I feel fine. And if I don't feel fine, it might not even be because of a diet thing, right? Because like, and I'm not claiming I eat perfectly healthy. I'm just saying like, there are other things than diet that, affect your health. Your emotions can affect your health. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about what's your moral obligation here, you got to make it work.
okay.
You got to make it.
Let me pause you real quick. Okay, so I was just going over the definition, and I get that you're showing that the definition leans towards an obligation. It doesn't use the word obligation. It also doesn't use the word imperative. Now,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't need to. That's part of the
okay.
argument. That's like what we're saying is like, hey, we're telling other people this philosophy, this definition of veganism over here is what is the moral obligation, right? So we're not.
Yeah.
So the definition doesn't need to tell itself it's a moral obligation. Just like
Yeah.
when I define murder, I don't need to tell you it's a moral obligation to not murder in the definition of murder, right? We just
That's
know.
the thing. I guess I just I'm going to ponder that more. Next time we talk, we'll talk about the word obligation. I just don't use that word. I don't think I would use that word when discussing killing.
Well, why not? Because like if you're like
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If we're talking
I
about
think
people like this, there's a random person on the street. They're going to go murder this other person over here. They're telling you about it. Would you not tell them, hey, you're kind of like morally obligated to not do that? Would you not like impose upon them? Would you not try to use this? They have a mental faculty here with morality. We can, this is the whole point of veganism. The outreach style of veganism is to get into that mental faculty and get people to contemplate and ask these questions so they can like truly arrive at the right answer, not give themselves some self-biased delusion to not think about for every single meal where they eat these these baby animals who went through all this like pain and suffering to just for them to have this 15 minutes of pleasure, right? Like is that not all they're doing it for? Is that not unjustified?
I'm not sure. I might just have a dislike for the word. Even when we talk about humans, I prefer I like to think of things in legal terms, so the moral part doesn't really affect me for humans.
But like hold on. So when you choose not to murder, why are you choosing not to murder?
That's the thing. I like the idea maybe of using obligation when referring to how I feel about myself. I just don't. For some reason, what pops into my head when I think of the idea of obligations others have based on morals would be as if I'm claiming there are some like natural rights that sentient beings have, and I don't think natural rights exist. So I'm just anyways, it's just a word thing. I just don't think we should get hung up on it too much. If you need it to be part of the conversation, I think we might just
you use the words moral consideration. Why should we use those words instead of moral obligation? I mean, obviously we're having a conversation about words here, but like the point is that if you don't obligate them,
I'm not calling it a bad word. I'm just it's just something that I would want to think about further.
Right, and that's fine. You can do that. But like I'm just saying, like a part of the outreach style, the reason why I think it's effective and why it gets attention is because we're actually invoking that mental faculty of moralism that is within us, just like as a biological thing. We just have these innate like signals in our brain that sort of like inform us like, hey, that was wrong. Like we have a conscience, right? This conscience is that mental faculty. And so what obviously you can break your obligations, right? You can have a legal obligation to pay your taxes and then not pay your taxes. You can have a moral obligation to, not murder somebody and then you murder somebody, right? Like you can break those obligations. Obligation doesn't mean it's a law, like you physically can't do it. It just means that you are being held to a certain standard and you cannot leave the standard without a justification. If you do, we're going to be pissed. That's what that.
Yeah, no, I got
right?
you. I'm just telling you off the top of my head. I view obligation the same way I'd view rights. When you were just bringing up the legal thing, all that popped in my head is yes, we can know exactly what your legal obligations are, but moral obligations are complicated. Now, different people might think differently on it. If I'm on an island, I might kill somebody and eat them, where half the people might go yes. That's perfectly fine. It's justified. Where the other half would say, no, you have a moral obligation to not kill and eat them, and they wouldn't accept my justification. So anyways, I just like the word obligation. I just want to hold off on it for a bit.
Well, religious people will point to the Bible, for example, or the Quran or whatever religious text, and that will be their moral system. And so like religious people will actually tend to turn around and be like, you vegans don't have any morals. You don't have anything you can map it to because, essentially at the end of the day, anybody can just do whatever they want, and these people are going to disagree with each other about what's moral and what's not. But since it's a mental faculty and we have this conscience that like basically will digest these different pieces of information and then make a decision. If you're missing a piece of information, obviously it won't be able to accurately come to the right conclusion. So the point of moralism is to understand like, hey, I'm not always going to have all the information. I'm not always going to be right. But I do know at the end of the day, I have a duty to try and get to the most correct idea or idealism that I can of what is moral and what's not.
Yeah.
And sometimes people can go like, I'm going to look at the Bible. I'm going to be like, it says don't murder in there. I can point at the Bible and that's what makes it a moral, thing for me. But for me, I don't point at the Bible and go, hey, it's written down. You can't argue with this, even though people do argue with it, right? because people have different interpretations of what those words mean. But basically, it's not objective; it's subjective, and you have to you have to be aware of your own duty to make sure you make the correct answer, because if you don't, you're only really harming yourself. It's an evolutionary trait that's designed to help us move forward as a society and to be more fair. Basically, have a just treatment of all people, and not just like humans, but like also animals, because we know they're there. There's somebody there. There's somebody home. There's somebody who wants to be respected. There's somebody who wants to live, who doesn't want to be born into slavery. And we need to like take them out of that. And I would tell anybody who doesn't understand why. First, I would say it's a moral obligation. The reason it is because X, Y, and Z. Give them the whole argument. They'll argue with me. They'll be wrong because they won't have a good justification. And then it will be a moral obligation. Yeah. And then they'll be like, oh shit, I have to be vegan because it's a moral obligation.
I likely agree with you. I just want to. You're fine.
Got a call here. Sorry.
You're good. I'm just reading a comment real quick. No, I likely agree with you. I just it's just not a word I commonly use, so I kind of want to hold off on it. Let's see. Okay, I did want to sort of segue just for a sec, just to calm ourselves down from the obligation thing. Real curious, do you, if somebody was into the whole freegan dumpster diving business, something's being thrown away, nobody's going to know. I see an issue with people witnessing a vegan eating like a burger that's going to go in the garbage or already went in the garbage. If somebody witnesses it, then it will harm the image of that person, showing their values and whatnot. But would you say that if nobody knew, or at least nobody but you knew, and your vegan friend did it, would you consider that not vegan the same way you consider the roadkill not vegan?
Sorry, I think I missed the first part there. So
just the idea of somebody throw like so.
Freeganism. That's what you said. Yeah,
food was going to go in the garbage.
Yeah. So oh gosh, that's like, it's still not okay, because you're still promoting that subconscious, like, hey, I'm going to get that burger when they're done with it, and then those people who have that burger, like if it's your mom or your dad or something, they're going to be like, I need to make more.
No, you have to
actually eat the meat, because I'm telling you, they just don't understand what the moral,
I will accept that is a possibility, but you have to accept that it is a possibility that somebody could truly be doing it for moral reasons, and they don't care about their health at all. They're just going to eat whatever they can eat. That, like, if there's blackberries,
it would be a different moral system, right? It would be a different moral system, because it's if you're eating, because it even has its own word, it's freeganism. It's like, hey, I'm not going to pay for these animals, but I'm still going to eat them. I'm still going to be okay with consuming something that came from those exploitive systems, because, hey, I didn't give them the money for it. So it's a different moral system, right? Because with veganism, it is strictly like hey, I understand that these animals have rights. If I eat them, I know that I will basically be showing other people that it's okay to eat them. So I have to hold myself accountable for that.
I agree with you, and the best comparison I can give is my rescue guinea pigs. I have 3 of them, and I think the more I make it known that I have them and show people how cute they are, the more it's going to make people go, oh, I want to have those, and they're going to go buy some at the store. So we have to be aware of how our actions affect things, even if our actions aren't wrong. So if it's not wrong for me to rescue these guinea pigs and give them a great life, it might be wrong to make people be aware of them and how cute they are. Same thing with the burger thing. If somebody orders a burger and it was made wrong, and they just throw this bag from a restaurant in the garbage, and somebody's sitting right there that is perfectly fine with opening that bag and eating that burger, is a vegan that does not eat animal products because they don't want to put it in demand, but they don't care about it actually entering their system. If they take that and eat that, and that happens like once a year or 50 times a year, doesn't really matter, as long as they intentionally aren't letting anybody know about it. And I think that's an idea that kind of matters. But more importantly, they're not letting it affect how they talk to their friends and have their friends like, I hope you don't eat half that burger. None of that. That has to exist. or at least
Um,
hypothetically, it can exist.
like so like in the conversation about the moral system, if we are going to say like, hey, there's this person here who is doing just that,
Hmm.
and it's literally trash can food, not like, oh, there's leftovers, that people are going to feel bad about you, and so they'll buy you
Trash
more in the
can,
future.
trash can, or about to be trash can. An example: I worked at a Starbucks a couple years ago, and at the end of each night, there were like literally 50 to 100 sandwiches every night would get put in a giant trash bag. And unless people wanted to take it home, and it would get thrown in the garbage. So if you were the only person working, you're the manager, you let everybody take whatever they take, and then they all leave, and you're going to throw the big bag away. If you take that home and you eat a meat and cheese sandwich every single day because you tossed those in your freezer, because they were going to go in the garbage. I mean, sure, you could give them to other meat eaters and hope that makes them go and buy less at the store, but let's ignore that added element, which I think is fine. But that person, nobody knew that they took them. They're legally allowed to. The company tells you can take them, and they take them home because they're supposed to go in the garbage or be taken home. If they eat that, I'm not saying people should do that. We're going to extremes, but I'm just
We're going to
saying
an edge. We're going to an edge case, which is most
it,
likely very
it
few and far between.
it's just an
And
important question because the definition. So I'm just
and
curious:
but
is that person vegan?
there's already a word for it. It's veganism.
Hmm.
And the reason they created that other word is because it's almost vegan, but it's still not. It's for the same reason I gave you about the roadkill.
I think people
So
like attention, so they create different terms for different things. People like to
and
call
that
themselves all kinds of
right,
things.
but like if you like with the roadkill thing, if you hit the animal, it was already sentient at one point, and then you eat it, even though you didn't intentionally kill it. If
Mhm.
you eat it, you're still giving yourself that. So you're basically still you're still gaining and consuming from them. So like
What if the person in front of you hit the deer, they didn't stop. You get out, you put the deer out of its misery, or it was already dead from the car wreck. You're not you're not willing to take a deer that you hit yourself. Let's say that person will never hit a deer, but if they spot somebody hitting a deer, they'll consume it versus consuming other calories.
So, like, we don't live in a world where we need to do that, right? If we were in a post-apocalyptic world, that might be okay because you have to try to guarantee your own survival, and if that means there's not enough food, where you can afford to survive, and you have to do something like that, then sure, maybe it makes sense, and it might especially be more moral than just straight up, killing extra animals intentionally, but we're talking about still you've exploited them for their meat. You've taken the product or you've taken something that was part of their body and then you brung it into your own body, gave yourself those calories, gave yourself that protein, and you did that without really having a good reason to. There's still no good reason to, because if you're going to like eat these dead animals, like you're still going to, like the edge case that you're talking about is so hypothetical because there's never going to be a case where somebody doesn't see you doing this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So
I
it's not
think
a
I
real,
think
it's not a really a real, hypothetical.
I think when
The
you
real
brought up
hypothetical, they still see you doing this stuff. They
okay,
still, so that's why you can't call it veganism, because it's not, that's not what a vegan does. They don't eat the
sure.
roadkill. They go, damn, I need to be way more
Ru-
careful and not hit them ever again. And
I think you're
basically,
wrong. I think you're wrong.
you can tell me that, hey, it might be moral for them to do that, and I can argue with you on whether or not it's moral, but I can definitely tell you it's not vegan, because what it arrives at is still exploitation, even though that death was unintentional or that death wasn't caused by you, right? So if a farmer kills an animal on their farm and then they leave that pig there on their farm and they are not actually planning on, profiting from it, and
Mhm.
then you go steal the dead
That's
animal,
perfectly vegan.
it's the animal was still exploited.
I
You
I
still
don't
gain
I
from
don't think that
their
I don't think that has
from
anything to do with veganism.
it
What if
does, because
what
it
if
is a mentality.
what if in the
And that's
U.S. what if in the U.S. they completely outlaw farming completely. They're going to do my approach of they'll pick a certain date. They'll say at this date, 1 year from now, it will be illegal to eat animals. It'll be illegal to own animals, enslave them, kill them, any of this stuff. We're going to take, if there's any left, we're going to take them to a sanctuary. Other than that, farmers, do what you do. And then that's official. So from that point on, it would be completely illegal to farm animals. I would say it's perfectly vegan to eat meat at that point, to buy it at the store even.
Wait, oh, you're talking about the dead animals from the ones that
just whatever's
were
left
in the sanctuary.
Yeah, knowing that you're not putting it in demand. Because what's wrong is the reason it's wrong, even if you're not the killer, is putting it in demand.
You were asked this question before. I don't remember the guy's name, but one of the guys who liked one of the old definitions, would you kill and eat your grandma?
David C. Arnaz. Yeah, I love that guy.
Yep. So that was a good question because it's true. Like I'm guessing you probably would find somebody eating their own grandma. It is a moral problem because there's a mentality associated with that. The mentality is that it's okay. You're saying it's okay.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is okay about it is the fact that because you had nothing you didn't contribute to the part of the exploitation, that part of the exploitation that you get to gain. And you don't, it's still not justified. Why is it justified? But the animal is still exploited. And in the case of like the pig that the farmer already slaughtered, and then you go steal that pig's body, how is that justified?
What's
is it
just
not about that? What's just about it?
What's different from doing that and taking a rock home, getting a
rock
good skipping
rock didn't have a sentient life before it was murdered.
Before, sure, but once it's already there,
so the mentality is like, hey, I didn't cause that. Now I can go steal this farmer's meat, and now I'm okay because I'm morally justified. But you're still not justified. I would like to hear what's the justification for that? Why is that okay?
Okay, what I think is okay is anything where your actions are not causing harm and suffering to others. So as David also said, if you find a feather on the ground, you can't use it. You can't use that feather because it belonged to an animal. I don't care about feathers. I don't care about carcasses. I don't care about any of the things unless there is a sentient being that is being harmed.
You're against exploitation, though, right? I get the harm and stuff like that.
I am against exploitation of sentient beings.
Right.
I love exploitation of anything else, including dead grandmas.
I get that the dead being is no longer sentient, but at a certain point they were sentient. Don't we understand that by stealing a dead body and eating it when we don't need to, that we are essentially taking still, even though it's a dead thing now, we created this mentality where that's okay, and we're going to do it again. And then essentially it's the same problem with all these other mentalities that allow non-veganism to go on, right?
One, I don't think we should steal, but if you mean take it because it's left there and it's not illegal, that's fine. Now, the mentality thing, I think we should be aware of how something could affect our mentality. We should say, if this would lead to this issue, we shouldn't do it. It is the reason. So like I have food addiction like crazy. I have my whole life have been trying to figure out how to not eat unhealthy foods that are super addictive. And I used to love animal products. And so I started being vegan like 20 years ago. I was vegan for like a year and a half, fell off the wagon, all this different stuff. I've been vegan for 8 years now. The reason, aside from it, I don't find it to be healthy, the reason I wouldn't do the vegan thing is because I'm aware of how food affects my dopamine levels, and I know it would not be smart of me to do it. If somebody else that it didn't affect them wanted to eat the vegan way, I would think that's totally vegan. And so, yes, I agree with you. We should be aware of what it will make us do.
So, I mean, is it not still exploitation, even though the animal was like, because aren't we taking the body and we're eating that body? That body, could easily, be buried, or composted, I guess. That's the natural way the earth processes bodies, right? But like basically like we, by eating the roadkill, are now, like I said, it's not a world where nobody's going to see you. If you do that regularly, people are going to see that. And then they're going to be like, oh, okay, so this vegan over here gets to eat the animals that they kill, but then that they kill like, oh, because they hit it with their car. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, they just accidentally hit it with their car because, you know, and that's what I'm talking about is that mentality is that people cannot look at your actions and get the right sense of your mentality if they don't understand what it is that you're doing. And they're not going to understand roadkill because they're actively eating these animals that are exploited in much worse ways. But if you're eating the roadkill, you're still giving this mentality not only to yourself but to other people that it's okay. And if we do that, then it starts to like it's like that rule thing. If you don't make hard rules, people will look for any loophole to break them, and then it will just keep going.
Like, I don't have any thoughts on people looking for loopholes. It's a bummer when different people, their brains work different ways that could lead to bad actions. That is what it is. But what I will say is that we are talking about two different things. We are talking, in one sense, we're talking about what is moral. And in another sense, we're talking about what could lead to different things, or what could seem, I don't know what the other thing we're talking about is. I think that there is no moral issue with the action of dead deer on the road that was not killed intentionally being eaten, and dead grandma that died of natural causes that is being eaten. There's no moral issue. But I think that there is reason to think of how it'll affect us if we do it. For example, I don't think there's a moral issue with eating dead grandma, but I would never let somebody that ate their dead grandma babysit my kids. I'd be concerned about them.
Why is that?
Because I personally think it's weird. I do not think probably because of our societal norms, and that's probably the only answer.
But what about the societal norms makes it weird?
What about the societal norms? The societal norms. It's just the idea that it's not done.
I get that, but people also don't eat roadkill. So if somebody doesn't eat roadkill, some do. Well, okay, maybe some do. But I'm talking about vegans in this case. So,
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any vegans out here. You know, it's not the norm for vegans to eat roadkill. Are you not going to let the vegan who eats roadkill now, simply because it's not the norm, not babysit your kid?
That's what I'm not sure
Simply
about.
Because it's not the norm.
It would depend on how weird I find it and what I think of it. If I didn't know that a lot of serial killers like to do things with dead animals and torture animals and stuff like that, and then that's a thing that the FBI has for how they can track down people if they find kids that have been reported to do this. If I didn't know that, then maybe I would have different thoughts on that. So knowing that, if I see a kid that has that issue, I might think, oh man, I don't want my kids to hang out with them. So we can use information that we gather to.
I get that. It's good, and it's good information, but what it is that's about it that is it's not so much societal norms that we're against. We're against that mentality, is what I would suggest.
If somebody is just walking down the street naked, man and woman, two of them or two separately, just running down the street naked, out in nature, this is perfectly normal. And if nothing bad is happening, nothing bad is happening. But do I have concerns about that? Would I want somebody that feels comfortable in this day right now running around with their genitals out? Would I want them babysitting my kid? I would think there might be something off, and I'm not sure exactly why they're doing it. But it's just not a norm in our society. So yeah.
Okay. But our original example,
roadkill and dead grandma.
I gotta go here soon.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to wrap this up. So, and actually, let's just I'm just gonna make a final statement here. So
go for it.
My understanding here is that it's not so much that these edge cases that you're trying to explore have any issue. You know, there's nothing. There's no vegan issue with that. It's probably good to have these, conversations and explanations for why we think the way we do. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about the definition of veganism, We have to maintain the integrity of that, and we have to maintain the moral obligation about that. And if you have a definition that does not do those two things, then I cannot support that definition. I have to, come over here and try to reel you in and be like, no, 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 right? And so that's basically what I've been trying to do, and I'm just trying to say like, hey, I think you're vegan, right? I that's what I think. Not everybody in the audience is gonna say that. Not every vegan is gonna say that, but I think you are. It's just that there's certain messaging that you have, or if you put way too much emphasis and focus on these other edge cases, we're not really going to ever get anywhere with veganism. It's actually going to obfuscate the understanding of what it is, because it will be put in the face of non-vegans who are seeing these edge cases, and then they'll not really understand what is the crux of all this in the first place, right? So that's why changing the definition to something that is a lot more loose, something that is a lot more, attempting to be inclusive, but is actually including people that we don't normally consider vegan, that it's just not going to push that moral message. It's not going to have the same impact that it did. I think the way we're doing it right now is very good. I think it helps us be united because we're doing it for the animals. We're understanding what our argumentation is, what our language is, the importance of basically getting others to see their moral side of this. And you can call it moral consideration for yourself, but it is an obligation. That's where that power comes from. That's where that fire comes from. When I'm against murder, I'm not against murder because I morally consider humans. I understand that it is an obligation for myself to not do that.
Can I double check? Now you're saying obligation for yourself, and that you would want and hope everybody would find it an obligation for themselves, or are you saying that you are declaring it is an obligation for everyone?
So the way I think it works is, you make a declaration, then you challenge me, then we debate, then we arrive at an answer, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think the process should work. There's nothing wrong with people saying something I don't agree with that should be a moral thing, right? Like if people think abortion should be illegal, there's nothing wrong with them saying that or declaring that, but they have to be willing to be challenged on it. And if you can't answer, fundamental things, or if there are fundamental flaws, you'll start to see that it's unsubstantiated, and you should not be privy to, you should not be, integrating yourself into moral systems that just have a weak basis. We have a duty to find the strongest moral system, because if we don't, then we humans are going to step on ourselves. We're going to exploit ourselves. We're going to erode our own rights. We're not going to understand what's moral anymore. We're not going to have any moral agency. That's why it's an obligation, is because we don't want to suddenly evolve in such a way where we lose our sense of morals. We have to be able to sense those things. That's where that comes from. So it is a subjective mental faculty. Me declaring it doesn't make it true, but when I argue with somebody, the truth will start to come out. The truth reveals itself. So I don't necessarily have every word, written in a way where it's explicitly correct, but I know that it is. I can make that argument, and if I'm challenged on it, I can defend it really well. And I don't want to defend something that is just moral consideration. I want to defend something that's an obligation.
Gotcha.
That's where that fire comes from, right?
Okay, and I just want to respond to something you said really quick, and then I'll let you finish up. The edge cases, the unique, strange things I talk about like calories or crop deaths. I'll talk about predator culling and a few different kind of wilder things like that. The eating the deer, eating the freegan, the thrown away food. This is not a message I want for non-vegans to turn them vegan or anything like that. I think that it's interesting to have these conversations with people that are already vegan, that are interested in breaking down those topics. And that separately, I think it's important to, when you're focusing on getting people to go vegan, you focus on the more important things, the things they can relate to, just showing them footage from Dominion factory farm stuff. And that the ultimate goal is to end as much suffering as possible. So just because I talk about the edge cases doesn't mean that I think they're nowhere near the most important at all. In a lot of cases they're hypothetical. But anyways, go on.
Yep. And that's okay. It's okay to have hypotheticals. It's okay to talk philosophy and really get to the root of what these questions are trying to answer. But when it comes to words, I don't want to change the definition to something that it's not. And that's all I'm saying is like,
Yeah.
we can have all these good conversations. We can talk about what's moral, what's not moral. We can even talk about what's vegan and what's not vegan in the specific sense of what these edge cases are. But when we talk to non-vegans, we have to remain united. If we break away from the united stance of the moral message that we're trying to pass, whether you call it an obligation or a consideration, like we got to make sure people are aware of what that is, because if they're not, they're going to go their entire life not even thinking about it. They're going to have this false sense of moral, righteousness, and it's going to be wrong. They're not even going to know, and we have to fill in those gaps for them, and then basically,
that's just a mental
challenge
illness.
these. We just got to challenge these systems, you know.
Yeah, that I would just view that as a mental illness, and I don't.
What exactly?
The idea of somebody being capable of convincing themselves that they're morally righteous and finding loopholes to get out of things. I
don't think it's a mental illness. I think it's a mentality. I think there's a difference between those two, because if we call it a mental illness, then we're kind of telling them they can't do anything about it. But mentalities are, hey, this is my framework for how I view the world. And people do view it in a way where they are like, they give themselves permission to rule over other people and other animals, or do whatever they want, you know, and do these actions that are unjustified, have zero justification, or are substantially just weak, you know. They're just very weak arguments. You know,
I just don't think that we should have obligations on how we talk or word things based on how people's mentalities are going to affect their choices. We need to, like, if somebody sees like my thoughts on moral consideration, and then they think like, okay, I feel righteous, I'm doing enough. We would just talk to that person and go, well, how do you justify this thing you're doing? And then if they're not able to justify it, whatever, and it just becomes a whole conversation. But the idea, like, I think we need to be careful. Everybody needs to be careful in a sense that a thing they might want to do, they might be doing more harm than good. But I also don't think that we owe anybody the most perfect of everything. You know, we could never get anything done if we were worried about how somebody's mentality might make them make the wrong choices.
Well, it's the same no. So like with I'll just leave us on this little cliffhanger. So
yeah,
I believe when somebody is considering to murder somebody or not, that they have a moral obligation to not do it, even if their mentality permits them to. And so in the same way, veganism is a moral obligation. If you don't see not murdering people as a moral obligation, that's on you. You use the words however you're going to use them.
Since we are breaking down words,
it is.
Since we are breaking down words, murder refers to a legal obligation. So let's just say
that's
unjustly
the first definition.
killing.
If you look at all the other definitions of murder, you eventually arrive at one that can be pointed at, you know, for animals. If you don't like the connotation, I will just say slaughter, right? So the slaughter of animals, the slaughter of humans, like I can just easily replace that word. It's still a moral obligation not to slaughter humans without justification. You know, if you're not defending yourself, I'm talking about like you don't have a justification for it, therefore it isn't a moral.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Okay, so it is a moral obligation to be vegan. Awesome, we're in agreement here.
Something like that. But anyways, I like a lot of your ideas. You've convinced me of a lot of things. I have some plans for rewriting and adjusting my definition, and I will get that to you before we talk again.
Yep, I will actually send you my stuff this time. So now you'll have it.
Awesome. Right. Sounds great.
I will talk to you later. Good luck.
All right, take care. All right. Okay, cool. Good talk. I don't know. Somebody wanted to hop on the stream and talk. I don't know if they're still here. Mr. 8658, if you're still here, you can hop on and we can chat for a second. I see that there's been a lot of conversation with Let's Go Carney. I don't know if this person is a troll. No offense at all. If you truly feel some of the things you're saying, you should hop on here and let's talk. I can send you a link right now. Um, but whenever people talk about human breast milk not being vegan, I can't imagine they're doing anything but trolling. Now, that being said, I've never like I'm sure there's a lot of people that are kind of confused about veganism. They're the type of people that go, "Wait, is gluten vegan?" There might be some people that go, "Oh, well, it comes from an animal." They don't realize why we're vegan. So then they I just got a phone call from a number I don't recognize. Um, so I think there probably are some honest people, but the second you tell them it's breast milk from a person that's willing to do it, it really doesn't matter. Like, not even just feeding your own baby. If a woman pumps breast milk and wants to sell it to random strangers or give it to strangers for free, it doesn't matter if they're adults or anything. Nobody nobody was harmed or had anything taken from them. There's no moral issue. So anyways, yeah, let's go, Carney. If you are still here, which you are, let's see. He's okay. Not saying it's not vegan. I'm saying it's an animal product. Yes, correct. Of course, it's an animal product. So if anybody thought that, I don't think any of the vegans you are chatting with on here thought that that's what you were saying. But I don't know. I haven't seen all the comments. I wasn't reading many of them while I was chatting there. But yeah, and yeah, it's an animal product. It's from an animal. Yeah, I'm not sure what the point is. Okay, veganism debunked. It says a justification is just a person's reasoning to why they did something. Whether other people accept it, however, is a different thing. That's correct. I'm not sure what that's referring to. But yeah, that's correct. It's kind of like the whole island thing. If I was on an island, I was starving to death, I would kill a chicken, I would kill a human, to survive. That would be my justification. That would be my reason. And some people might disagree and think that's wrong. And so everybody has different justifications for different things. So for example, with eating animals, if humans needed to eat animals, if eating animals was good for humans, and not just good for humans, but better for humans than not eating animals, then I would think that would be a good justification for doing so. What happens when you don't have a justification, and similar, an example I used before was kicking a dog. If a dog is about to it's like, I don't know, looking angry and running towards a baby and it's about to eat this baby, you can kick that dog and it's totally fine. It's justified. But if a dog's just chilling and you get joy from kicking dogs, I wouldn't call that justified. Now, somebody might justify it themselves by saying they get pleasure from kicking dogs and pleasure is what matters. But I don't think that's justified. And I think that we as a society should stand up to have laws saying you can't just randomly kick dogs for fun. And so there will be cases where something might make sense or not make sense. So if somebody thinks they need meat for health, then I would at least want that person to be somebody eating something that's even thought of as healthy meat. If somebody's eating McDonald's burger and they say they need meat for health, then clearly they're just eating it for their taste buds. And so similar to kicking a dog just for your pleasure, eating a burger just for your pleasure has got to be morally wrong, unless you think that whatever the burger's made out of doesn't suffer or have a care of existence or anything like that. And so it's got to be wrong. Now, I personally have been convinced that we don't need to eat animals to be healthy and survive. So I think it's probably best to not eat animals whatsoever. But the people I care least about there being an issue would be people that truly eat whatever is thought of as that healthier meat products or whatever. I'm not in favor of this, but there's so many issues to work on that they're the least of our worries. It's just such a small selection of people. I think in the U.S., more than 80% of people are obese. And so the idea that there are a lot of people out there that are eating as healthy as possible, and part of what they're doing for their health is eating healthy animal products. It's just they are people that I have no interest in worrying about. But even them, I would say that if those animal products came from like a factory farm versus a regenerative farm, then you'd want to work towards the littlest amount of harm possible, especially when there's zero reasons or less reasons. So I really think even though we want this, it's good to have this overall message of I am vegan. I don't eat any animal products. I don't contribute to any animal harm. There's so much legal animal harm that I personally think it's better to focus on the issues that probably matter the most. If you can convince somebody that won't stop eating meat to like only eat stuff from like a free range farm, and they're only eating stuff that is potentially healthy for their body, and you like, yeah. Anyways, I think that's perfectly reasonable approach to hopefully get people to take. I would love to see if someone tried to try a vegan tiger or a vegan lion carnist will read to oblivion. What? I'd love to see. I'm not sure what that's saying. If somebody makes like a tiger or a lion go vegan, I don't think they can do. Yeah, I might just not understand what that's saying. Reasonable vegan, my dialogue would be about that. Okay. Can't join now because I'm at work. I'm considering to do it in the future. Just need to work out some stuff. I do have a video on my channel called Debunking Property Claim. Interesting. Yeah, I'll check that out. And then also on my channel, if you go to the About section and there's an email address, just shoot me an email and we'll set up a talk. Yeah, we should do it. Let's see. They wouldn't be morally wrong in your example with a burger. They'd only have their facts about nutrition wrong. Correct. If that's the thing, nutrition is complicated. Health is very complicated, which is why I think it's silly when somebody is like some form of a healthy version of keto or paleo or even carnivore to say, oh, whole food vegan is unhealthy. And I think the same thing the other way around. Like, I don't think when there is a decent amount of people, including experts, saying that something's healthy and it can be healthy if you do it right, I don't think it's really worth attacking. I think if somebody's eating like a paleo diet or a keto diet and they're eating veggies and various different I don't know, whatever those people eat. I know with like paleo, there's a decent amount of like nuts and seeds and veggies, and then they eat meat. So we can call this morally wrong if we don't think they should be eating the meat. But if you eat paleo or you eat Mediterranean or something, it's like to call that unhealthy. It's just not. In my mind, it's just not worth it. And I think it's super stupid when they say the same thing about a whole food vegan diet. Somebody that eats like beans and nuts and seeds and fruits and veggies and all this different thing. But what we can know is that all of these diets, all the experts in these diets say it is unhealthy to eat processed food, to eat cakes and cookies and all these processed sugars and these like white flours and all these different things. And so even though we can't know exactly for sure what the proper human diet is, we can have a good idea that like we can call it reasonable that if somebody's wanting to eat like a Mediterranean diet or whatever, if they're doing it really well, that we can say, even though we consider this immoral, they are doing what they are convinced is good for their health. If somebody says they're convinced that eating McDonald's deep fried French fries and a burger full, you got this white processed bread, you got this super processed burger, and then they're drinking a Coke, they would have to be lying if they're going to say that that's healthy. So to respond to this comment, that yeah, it wouldn't be necessarily more immoral. They just have their facts wrong, but their facts would get debunked so quickly. There's no way that they actually think it's healthy. Now, I think there are a large amount of people don't even think about health, and they might, if you were to tell them something was unhealthy, they'd go, "Is it really?" And so, yeah, I guess they just have to be convinced. But if you talk to somebody, they'd be hard pressed to figure out a way to explain that that's healthy. So anyways, I think that's a conversation that should happen more. I think we should focus more on conversations about health, and I don't think we do that. Oh, I see. Okay. This person is saying that tigers and lions can be vegan. It's already happening to cats, or at least feed lions and tigers with lab-grown meat. They don't require animal murder. Yeah. This is the whole predator culling thing. I don't know. I'm torn. I'm very torn on this topic. I lean towards letting nature take its course, but it's complicated. Most animals out in the wild, more than 95% of pretty much any animal will not make it to adulthood, just because that's how tough the wild is. So like if humans were so advanced that we had everything figured out, we're living great. There's no concerns. We figure out how to not have like pollution and not have excess garbage. Where I don't know. I don't know much about petroleum and plastics and all these things, but if we had a way to feed all humans, everybody is healthy and fine, and we had all this room, and then we're deciding, okay, everything moral is taken care of. But the only thing left is animals in the wild. Like, I don't think it's crazy that somebody might figure out a way to make it life better for wild animals. I don't know what the answer would be. Like, let's say we found a planet that humans and animals could live on. If the reason that 95% don't make it to adulthood is because they're all like, there's so many animals that they're all trying to compete for food and whatnot. If we took half the animals to to another planet or something, and they had all this room, would that fix the issue, or is the issue kind of guaranteed? Would animals always reproduce to the maximum they could, and then there would always be this issue? Do they reproduce the amount they do to have a likelihood of survival because of the different reasons that they don't survive? Like a turtle will like have, I don't know, certain types of turtles will have like hundreds of eggs, and then half those turtles will make it from where the eggs are laying in the sand. Half of them will make it to the ocean, because birds will like eat the other half. If we stop the birds from eating the other half, or we had like half the turtles go to a different planet, like would this fix things? I don't know. Anyways, it's interesting to talk about. I don't think it matters on a large scale, but it's very interesting to talk about it, I think. Let's see. It's reasonable that since every other mammal on Earth eats raw, uncooked foods, man's diet should also largely be unfired. Yeah, no, this is an interesting point. I've always kind of felt the same thing. Like, no other animal can cook food for the most part. There's probably some weird, unique case of something. And like the sun will dry out certain things, and then people will eat dried out stuff. But yeah, the idea of cooking seems to be so unnatural in a sense. Like it's natural for a monkey to take a rock to break open a nut. Where if they didn't have the brain to think of cracking that nut, then they would just not have nuts, and therefore they would lose out on that nutrition. So if taking a rock and cracking open a nut is one thing that's natural, then hitting rocks together to make a spark hit wood to make a fire, and then setting the nut on the fire or whatever other food. Yeah, it's just it's tricky, but I do see what you're saying. But something being natural doesn't mean that it's necessarily right. So from my understanding, beans are insanely healthy for you, like one of the healthiest foods that has ever existed. And but most beans, from my understanding, would also be kind of like poisonous if you didn't cook them. And so the fact that we can discover something doesn't mean that it's not best for us. Now, if we had no ability to cook, then we would have a natural diet. And let's say we had no ability to cook and no ability to process food. Then our natural diet would be whatever it is, not involving processing food. So let's say we had the intelligence to farm. So we still had selective growing where we would like try to get the best fruit and the sweetest fruit and all this different stuff, which is probably fine. But then we'd have this like kind of natural diet that doesn't involve stuff that's cooked, but that doesn't mean that that there aren't things that if you cook, like when you cook tomatoes, a different like nutrients forms when you cook tomatoes that you get this nutrients in your body when you consume a cooked tomato that you wouldn't get if you didn't cook it. And so it's just interesting. It seems weird. I lean towards preferring the natural. Like that we so often find that when we go away from natural, there are more harms. And so, for example, when a baby is born through C-section, they don't get the coating of the like vaginal fluid that they would get when they are have a normal birth, and that is such a good high quality thing for them for their first stages of being born. And so now that we've discovered that, a lot of people will like rub on the vaginal fluid to a baby once it had the C-section birth. And same thing with breast milk. Like we can create this formula that will keep somebody alive, but then we discover, oh wait, the baby getting milk from a nipple, the nipple actually helps form the face structure and the teeth structure, and that doesn't happen with formula. And then also the human body is just so wild that it can detect if a baby's sick, then the formula will change to give the baby what it needs. And it can also the skin can detect if the sun is out or not. So the milk at a certain time of day, like if you pump milk when during the daytime and you put that in a bottle and give it to your baby at night, the baby will think it's daytime because the milk is milk made from daytime, and it'll affect the melatonin levels and all this crazy stuff. So there's so much to what naturally happens that we don't understand, and then there's so much that we start to understand once we start to mess with things. And so I think we need to be cautious. I think leaning towards more natural things is good, but we just we need to study things and understand where they come from. Let's see. Okay. With that lion talk and the tiger talk, it was about caged ones. So at a zoo, we should give like lab grown meat instead of like killing animals for them. Fair enough. I don't know if we should have zoos. I don't think we should have zoos. I don't think we should have. I don't know. I don't know what I think the best thing is. So if we find an animal out in the wild that is dying, should we save it or should we let it be? If we save it and it can't live on its own out in the wild, is the best thing for us to give it the best life we can, whether it's like some kind of a good zoo or a sanctuary of sorts, which would be like what a good zoo would be as a sanctuary. And then at that point, if it was an animal that eats animal products, yeah, it's complicated. I think we should leave it to nature. If we didn't leave it to nature, I think the only ones we shouldn't leave to nature are the ones that don't eat animals. Because to save something's life, but in a way where it can't go back to nature, and then to have to kill animals to feed it. I mean, why would we save a life of something if we have to take a life to feed it? And then to feed it, you'd have to take a handful of lives. Um, so I think we just leave it to nature, especially if it's an animal eaten animal. Um, let's see. Oh, there's something about research, and What's this question? I gotta find out. I'm very curious. Okay. Is there any case that healthy, untainted breast milk cannot be given to babies? What? Okay, well, I don't know what that's about. Okay. Since every mammal. Okay, there we go. Cooking is what gives our brain body ratio. Humans cannot eat uncooked stuff except fruit. I mean, that's not exactly true. Now, there is some talk that cooking led us to evolve to having bigger brains. I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know if that's like the general consensus or not. But if it is, that's cool. I love looking into historical things. So I've been watching a lot of documentaries, and I just got this book on the history of humans, and like the first of our genus is Homo habilis, and which means handyman because it's the first species that's something like humans that started using rocks to turn into to create like knives out of rocks to actually like create tools, because a lot of monkeys will use rocks to open stuff, but to form a new tool to like make a spear, monkeys don't do that. Or not monkeys, but apes. Well, monkeys too, but apes don't do that. And anyway, so yeah, well, learning the history of Homo habilis to Homo erectus to Homo neanderthal to Homo sapien, it's very fascinating. It's interesting to see. But let's see. The idea that we can't eat uncooked anything that's not fruit, that's not true. So like, so for us humans and also for chimps, it's really good to eat greens, leafy greens, raw leafy greens. So like lettuce and kale and that kind of thing. I don't know for sure on all of them, all the details. I know spinach has a lot of oxalates, so you want to not go overdo it there. Carrots, I think carrots are perfectly fine to eat raw. A lot of things that we think of are veggies are actually fruits, because if they contain their own seed, then they're a fruit. So like zucchini seems like a veggie, but that's a fruit. Obviously tomatoes. But yeah, there's a handful of things. I know like garlic and onions are really good for people, but I don't know about you, but those two things, I couldn't just eat them whole. Like I know some people that could take an onion and eat it like an apple, but I prefer to have it like diced up and make a salsa or something. So anyways, there are other things that we can eat. I would say most things that if we, aside from a couple things here and there, we could probably have a pretty darn healthy diet eating a large amount of raw things. If we just ate a lot of fruit, a lot of leafy greens, nuts, and seeds, we'd probably have most of our bases covered. I think I've been convinced that we should eat like beans, and I like to cook a lot of things that I wouldn't normally like. I wouldn't eat raw, so like I like to make soups and. Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd put in a soup that I wouldn't eat raw is so like onions and maybe potatoes. But like celery is fine raw. It's not delicious, but it's probably a good way to get some nutrients. Okay, but it follows just okay, but it follows that our digestive system evolved over millions of years, well prior to the advent of cooking fires. We've had a much longer walk with raw foods than cooked foods evolutionarily. Depends on what you mean by we. So Homo sapiens have not. But if you mean what came before the genus of hominin, um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the cooking started around like hominins were the first to cook. So like Homo habilis or Homo erectus, um, and then the cooking was just kind of what happened at that point. I think Homo habilis habilis was the first time that we humans started not living in trees. Cooking meat to make it tender has been important for our brain growth. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. We didn't need such large jaw muscles anymore to chew foods. Jaw muscles shrunk, and the brain had room to grow. Interesting, interesting. I like finding out that kind of thing, and that is one thing I wonder. I don't. I would wonder that if eating meat is what led us to be able to get the bigger brains, would if all of a sudden all humans stopped eating meat, would over like a million years would we evolve to having different shaped jaws and then therefore smaller brains? That'd be interesting. Maybe I don't know. I think humans do a lot of good, and we at least have the capability to do a lot of good. But maybe maybe it could be good for human brains to shrink back, and then all animals just I don't know. No, it's probably not best. It's it'd probably be best if more animals were capable of moral thought, had larger levels of empathy. That'd probably be good. Cooking is pre-digesting food before it reaches the belly. Yeah, no, I definitely I read about that recently. That allows us to save energy in digesting the food, making the excess of energy go to the brain. Interesting. Yeah, no, I like that kind of stuff. I I, I don't know a wild amount, but let's see. Let's go. Carney says, reasonable vegan. Do you believe that the vegan rhetoric relies very much on hyperbole? Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I guess. I've heard theories are quite interesting, unproven. Cooking has unlocked nutrients. Okay. Um, what's your opinion on reintroducing species to the wild? Um, let's see. Oh, reintroducing species of wild animals that have been driven out of their natural habitats or extermination. Um, yeah, I mean, so if you can rewild animals, that's great. Like, so for example, I don't think humans should have ownership of animals. So if we took all domesticated cats and dogs, and let's say everybody agreed to be vegan and not eat animals. So if we took cats and dogs and all the pets, and then we also took all the livestock, cows and pigs and whatever, and we put them on some like large sanctuary that was essentially putting them back in the wild, but maybe a set area. I don't know. I don't know how fenced off areas of the wild are. But if you just put them there and let them live out their lives, and so you got like you're putting pet mice out there and pet bunnies and all the different things. And if dogs and cats reverted to their carnivorous ways and they ate like the mice and the bunnies and stuff like that, and then in this foresty area, cows and horses just like grazed on the grass and whatnot. I If they're able to breed on their own and populate the wild, that's perfectly fine. I don't see any issue with this. Um, Now, a lot of them are going to die off and have kind of sucky lives, so it might be better if it was more of a sanctuary that humans helped with. But yes, if an animal I don't think we should have domesticated dogs the ways that we have to have these small dogs with these squished faces where they can't breathe well. And so those are probably best to go extinct. They're probably not going to live out in the wild well. So whatever sanctuary they're on, it'd be better if they weren't tortured by things and if they just were made unable to reproduce and then they just die off and go extinct. I think that would probably be best. I haven't been convinced that there's any reason to keep a species around that we essentially created. Now, species that kind of created themselves, it's a whole different thing. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on. I don't really have a large understanding of animals going extinct and why we would care much about that aside from the ecosystem itself. So if an action was happening that was a man-made action that was leading to extinction of an animal that also was affecting the ecosystem, then it's probably worth helping. I don't really have an understanding of what exactly would affect the ecosystem. So, for example, when you take like large cats, you have jaguar, leopard, cheetahs, lions, tigers. If if on their own, whether it was due to us taking up too much land or not, let's say lions were going to go completely extinct. There would be no more lions there, but we'd still have all those others. I don't know if lions going extinct would affect the ecosystem in specifically a negative way. I wonder what happened when the saber-toothed tigers went extinct, or the woolly mammoth went extinct. I'm sure there's a handful of animals that if they went extinct, it would affect it negatively. I'm sure there's a lot of insects. From my understanding, if bees went extinct, that would be horrible. It would I don't know if that would just end everything. From my understanding, maybe same thing with ants. I just rambled so much I forgot what I was even talking about. Oh yeah, I was answering the question about rewilding. Yeah. Like I would hate the idea of like finding a hurt panda, saving it, but then when you put it back in the wild, it's just going to get destroyed because of how dominance hierarchies of animals work in the wild. But if you could truly rewild something, sure. But I just don't want harm to be caused. So if we have animals, like say domesticated animals that we realize that we shouldn't keep enslaving, if we can rewild it. But if it's likely going to experience more suffering, then maybe we should euthanize them. I don't know. Whatever's going to cause the least amount of harm, I'd say. So yeah. Somebody said they eat onions like apples. That's good. I wish I could do that. Okay, Dylan is here. I might have been just human competitive. What allowed us to become more okay. Oh, that reminds me, Dillian, I don't know if you're still here, but we are actually going to talk right about now. So let me know if you're here and available to talk, and then I'll end this and send you a new chat. Unless you want to chat on here and have it be live, the thing we're talking about. Not eating wasn't that gives us our brain. It's a lie. Cooking starches gave us a brain. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories. I don't know all the answers. There's already proof that vegan diets shrink the brain by 20%. What? Okay. Email me that. I've never heard of that, but I will gladly look into that. That'd be interesting. I thought cooking caused the brains to grow, not meat. Yeah, it might have. I really don't know. I mean, a lot of it is, just guesses, a hypothesis. I don't know which things we feel like we know versus don't. Let's see. Vegans really have it out for lions. Lions just something that gets brought up here and there, but yeah. Okay. Dillian, okay. Let me send you a link. Okay, not make it live. That's right. Okay. Cool. I'll send you a link in a sec. Okay. It's good talking, guys. If anybody has any questions, I've been doing a lot of short videos where I answer questions. Just go to the community section and find a spot to ask a question, and I will likely make a video reaction to it. If you want to come on the live stream and do a talk, send me an email on my channel where it says about. There's an email there, and you can email me. I'm also working on a website right now, and it's basically there's going to be a section that has a list of all vegan topics and my stances on them, but there's also going to be a couple side sections where I have writings from other fellow vegans, and then I'm also going to have sections where I break down rights violations and maybe topics that we should focus on the most. Just essentially like that cow tier list I made. But after me and Michael make other tier lists and start forming together ideas of how we can change animal treatment, through legislation. And anyways, there's going to be a handful of things there. And also, I'm writing up a bunch of different things on crop deaths because I'm contacting officials and finding out different things about rodenticides and crop farming and that kind of thing, or sorry, crop hunting, and those different details of basically breaking down all the crop deaths issues, so we can know how to talk about them more, because I feel like we ignore it way too much. And when people that do know about it, that are anti-vegans, talk about it, we don't really have good answers for them. And I don't think we need to have good answers to make ourselves look right. But if we are right, I think we should be prepared to share that information. That way others can know about it. So I'm going to try to track down the best information possible when it comes to insecticides and rodenticides, and all the various different effects that crop deaths have, so we can work towards changing that in the future and having a more vegan world when it comes to crop deaths, but also just so we can be educated on the topic. So anyways, website's coming soon. But I got to hop off here, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.